Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the stream. It's been a while since I have talked to you all, and I can't wait to do so today because, as I have teased previously, today I will be collecting donation reward incentives for a charity stream that I am planning all the way out in January. I'm very excited to do this. It's something that I've been wanting to do pretty much ever since Cideray's done her Sufferathon. I was just waiting for a good enough reason and enough clout to believe that we could actually make this thing work. So I'm very excited to share those details with you. But first, I will begin by saying hello to all of you. So hello, Otto. Hello, Mylan. And hello, A. And to all of you who are also in chat right now. So, for me, this semester is more or less over. There's some leftover grading that I have to do, but now for the next month or so, I am all in on the content and make good use of the time I shall. There are so many things that I am planning to do out here in December and January, and I'm very excited to basically get all of it done. Hello, welcome, Gallo. Welcome to the stream. So let me talk a little bit about sort of the goal of this charity stream. The goal of this charity stream is to raise money for St. Jude's Research Hospital, and I'm going to be doing that by doing a very, very long journal club. So what does that mean? So here's the plan. On the 11th of January, starting from 9 a.m. EST to 9 p.m. EST, so 12 hours worth, plenty of time for all of our friends all over the globe to tune in. I will be having a 12-hour journal club, a very, very long session where I cover all of the glioblastoma research I can in half a day. So I've kind of been reluctant to talk about cancer on, in a video properly, just because, my style is cartoony and light, with jokes thrown in. And I felt that for me, the scar, I think, of the impact of cancer is so deep that it doesn't feel exactly right. Or rather, I don't think that I have built up enough skill to tackle that topic in a light kind of way, but I don't feel as bad doing it through a stream, and I feel like I am getting better every time I release a new video, so that might change in the future, but as a stream I think this is well worth doing. Also, spending so much time on the nuances of cancer research I think will provide a level of transparency to where your donation dollars goes to. So I'll talk a little bit more about that aspect in the future. So 100% of the proceeds go directly to St. Jude's Research Hospital through YouTube giving. So if you don't know, St. Jude's Hospital is one of the most reputable charities out there, especially in the field of cancer research. And I'll talk a little bit more about them in the following slide. So the day will be broken up as follows. So from 9 to 12, I'm planning to do an introduction to cancer. So this will be more of a lecture style, less of a journal club, but sort of I probably wouldn't call it succinct, but a much more lecture style, something that you would typically find in a classroom, presentation on cancer and its nuances, and also glioblastoma in particular, which I am particularly interested in for this year. And I'm also going to talk at length about where your donation money will go to, and that is the St. Jude's Research Hospital. I'll give a short introduction in this presentation, but I'm going to go very deep into analyzing or justifying why I've chosen St. Jude's as a donation target, just because I did spend quite a bit of time going through Charity Navigator for the best charities, and I think that this one checks off the most of the things that I would want out of a charity on my list. From 12 to 1, we will have lunch, and I will be completing some donation incentives if any of that has happened by that point. And then from 1 to 4, this is going to be the pathophysiology and the molecular biology of glioblastoma. And so one of the papers that I really, really wanted to cover, particularly about the interplay between the immune system and this devastating brain cancer, it was not free to use. However, the copyright for the paper is held by the author. So I actually reached out to the author to say, hey, I would love to cover your paper. Do I have permission to do that on stream? And she wrote back very excitedly wanting to come on, which I am also very excited. I've never actually had the opportunity to talk to an actual current researcher, especially not at the professor level to discuss their paper with them. I think that's going to be a very interesting experience because the last time I've had to present in front of a professor was graduate school, so I'm actually a little nervous about getting things wrong, but I'm sure it'll be very fun to have an actual expert in the field, sort of walk through their work with us, and then they can be a part of the experience as I don't plan on walking you through, like, chewing up and digesting the data for you. It'll be like how we normally do Journal Club. But I think there'll be some extra drama as there'll be the actual answer bank on stream with us, which I think is very exciting. Welcome Sparkles to the stream, and Marlon and G's. Louise, welcome. Yeah, it's a really exciting opportunity, and I figured I would wait longer to garner some clout before I started to reach out to researchers, but I'm very happy that a researcher is interested in sharing their expertise, and that's going to be something to look forward to for sure. And I've got a lot of papers on the crazy immune evasion mechanisms like glioblastoma employs. I've been tackling with this issue sort of since the beginning of Phyte Neutrophil, this idea of like, can I call cancer cool? And I think that I can say that the molecular mechanisms by which we battle cancer are cool. And I really, really want to share what I've learned with you all in this charity stream. And from 4 to 5, I'll have some snacks and complete another round of donation incentives, followed by a session from 5 to 8 where I talk about current and future treatment strategies. So the development of these technologies that can hopefully make this cancer a lot more manageable and treatable. If you didn't know, glioblastoma is not only the most common form of brain cancer, but is also one of the most aggressive cancers to get. The prognosis for this type of cancer is very, very bleak. And, treatments and research into it have not really yielded something that we can consider a reliable treatment. And so I wanted to make very clear that this is an ongoing battle. And I also want to highlight St. Jude's actual contribution to the battle against these cancers. I think, what I want to do is I want to make you all very comfortable with donating to St. Jude. And luckily, a lot of their papers that they publish are free to access. And so to be able to show you directly, not just from like a PR statement, a press release, I want to show you their actual work, stuff that we can look at together as being their precise impact on the scientific community and what it means to donate to St. Jude. So I'm a very heavy believer of their mission, and I'm going to, again, explain that a little more in the next slide. And then finally, 8 to 9, I will have dinner and complete the last round of donation incentives and do a little closing ceremony. Of course, I am hoping, and I'm keeping my expectations low, but I'm hoping that we will have quite a few people join me along this 12-hour journey. I'm very excited to do this. It's very, very ambitious because I've never streamed for that long. I do think it would be kind of interesting to see how I would fare under these marathon stream conditions. Because I have to, right? And I think that there's something exciting about that kind of idea. All right, so St. Jude's Research Hospital, I'm going to give a lot more detail when I actually do the stream, but just to give you their highlights and to explain why I've chosen them over other charities, this is an institution that is almost entirely reliant on donor funds. So their operation is funded almost entirely by goodwill of their donors. It provides cancer healthcare for children at no cost to families. So this is their main sort of draw. The thing that they report as being the strongest draw to their charity is that they believe very strongly that no family with a child that has cancer should have to essentially have their entire lives thrown into absolute ruin by the cost of healthcare in this country. So they cover their entire bill. So they like to say that like no bill is sent to families if they are getting treatment from St. Jude. So that's very, very admirable. But this is more of a local incentive, right? I'm very aware that many of you are not from the US. And so I wanted to pick a charity that had impact internationally. So while this is a very, very strong reason to donate if you are here in the US locally, I'm also going to talk about their international impact, which is the actual reason why I chose them. Like this stuff right here, this is great, right? This is wonderful. But in terms of, seeing a future and a vision where we don't have to deal with this as humanity, I think St. Jude's is a great venue or to invest in for that vision of the future. So they are engaged in meaningful research to fight childhood diseases. So it's actually not just cancer, but I will be covering their cancer research, and we'll dive into at least one of their papers in terms of the tools and the data that they have supplied to the scientific community at no cost. So you can actually see sort of where your donation money goes to. By 2027, they are planning to expand their domestic, treatment facilities internationally. So this is something that I'll get into a lot more in depth during the stream. But basically, since the start of 2022, St. Jude's has partnered with the WHO to try to bring affordable cancer treatment to low-income and middle-income countries. So I'm, again, fully aware that as someone who lives in the US, I'm extremely privileged with regards to my personal ability to access world-class healthcare. Now, whether or not I can afford that healthcare, given our health insurance situation in the US, I'm sure you're all aware, that's a different story. But in terms of like just being able to have that around is pretty incredible, actually. Thank you so much for the donation, Maxim. Thank you so much. Your support means a lot. I'll actually probably add that to the match that I will have, because I will match your donation up until a certain extent. So, I don't want to actually get money from you this stream. So I will increase my match to $110. I will just have to remember to do that by the end. But thank you so much for the super chat. Yeah, so they're planning to expand internationally and to provide free cancer treatment to children in low and middle income countries, which is not only like, okay, it's great that the children get those resources, but also what that means is that they are planning to build up a distribution network in these countries to build that infrastructure to actually get the treatments to where they need to be. And so this is something that I do feel is quite important on a global scale, because it's not just the US that deserves money to solve their problems, right? So I wanted to pick a charity that would have that international appeal. And of course, St. Jude's Research Hospital is one of the most reputable charities to ever exist. I really did try to find dirt on St. Jude's because I thought that was an important part of my process, is to, find any sort of controversies that they were embroiled in, just so that I could get like the full image. And, what I'll have to say is that I'm not dissuaded from what their mission is and how they choose to go about it. All right, so that's essentially the plan here. That is the goal. That is all of my cards laid out on the table in the most transparent way possible, right? And I hope that you can agree with me that St. Jude's is worthy of this type of donation. And I hope that you will actually help me with designing this charity stream, which I will be heavily PRing at the end of December to try to drum up some hype, because I do think that it's a pretty unique way, I think, to raise money, to be able to sort of bring you that kind of experience. I think would be quite wonderful. But I think it would be fun to come up as a community some donation incentives, right? So here are 3 categories of donation incentives that we have here. One is milestone based. So this is basically community goals. So in terms of like how much overall money are we raising? If we can raise up to a certain amount, then I will complete some of these milestone rewards. So these I think are best suited for things like challenges for me to do or content for me to make. Then we have an idea that I borrowed from Magic the Noah and Cider A Sufferathon. This is the idea of a good and bad wheel. So for donations that are of a minimum of $10 USD, during the breaks, I will be able to spin the wheel, the good wheel, for $10. And this consists of stuff that is technically good for my health. And I'll explain what that means, or what that could mean, or why that might be entertaining in the next couple slides. And then over here, we have the bad wheel, which is based out of a minimum $20 donation. And then these are incentives that are, of course, the opposite. These are incentives that are going to be bad for me, right? So what is content if not a streamer's suffering? So I want to brainstorm some of these suggestions with you. And just to sort of start off the brainstorming, I have not only a mix of my ideas, but some of the ideas that my Discord community has offered. If you want to put more ideas, you can do so in the chat. There's also a link to a Google form where you can log it more permanently. But I kind of wanted to just go over the vision that I had for some of these milestones, right? So let's see. So one of the things that my audience has been asking for is something that I actually gave up a while ago, and it's more Plague Inc. shorts. So I wonder what you all think about this. I thought that I had basically finished making content about Plague Inc. I don't hate the idea of making more Plague Inc. stuff. It's just that, like, with only 24 hours in the day, I figured that's like not the content that I wanted to push out most urgently. But if there is sort of a desire for this kind of content, I am actually very happy to do so in the month of January, because I'm not because basically we're on winter break, right? So I'll actually have the time, and so I'll actually have the time to make more content. And so a lot of people have been clamoring for cure mode in terms of what I choose to cover in Plague Inc. So I think that's a very nice sort of incentive to do for the people that have joined me for those Plague Inc. shorts. I have pre-Phyte the Neutrophil content. I've actually been a content creator maybe for like a decade, but you know, like 10 years of content has basically never been shown to anybody, because I think as a content creator, in order to grow, you have to just put your stuff out there and be judged for it. And if it sucks, it sucks, because the process of bringing your creations to completion and the growth of breaking down the mindset that things have to be perfect is really important to make content. But I just, you know, like 10 years ago, I just didn't have that, right? Like I made stuff and it sucked and I didn't want anybody to see. And I think it'd be fun to release some of that on the second channel, so that you can sort of see, or maybe even be encouraged to make content yourself, right? Like some of my like social media mutuals, my VTuber mutuals, have said that they are experiencing difficulty with publishing their content because they're not happy with it. And I just want to be like, yeah, you just gotta, you know, it'll get better. Your content will get better. My actual strategy for Phyte the Neutrophil was to not use my best ideas first, because I knew for a fact that my content was going to start off as kind of weak. I still look back at that tuberculosis video, which is a carbon copy of what Tirzu would do. But the thing is that the process of, you know, doing that is going to help you develop your own voice as a content creator. And so I'd like to give people who are thinking about doing content some relative estimation as to what my unpublished content looks like, to give you an idea of like, yeah, I mean, we all start somewhere. And sometimes somewhere is pretty cringy and bad. So that's something that I was thinking of. Also, welcome to the stream, Icosahedron. Welcome. Maybe less edited version in the second channel if you're busy. Yeah, I'm thinking that a lot of this can be put on the second channel, which I'm really enjoying having, because then I don't have to worry about the algorithm. All right, so what's next? Boost the Discord server. So this is, I believe, a suggestion from my Discord. Speaking of the Discord, let me go ahead and link the Discord in the chat real quick. I should really set up stream elements to do this as a command. I'll have to remember to do that. So let's go ahead and share that link if you want to join. Very, very cool. Yeah. So that's definitely something that I'm very happy to do if we reach certain milestones, just to boost my own Discord server. That sounds like a great idea, actually, because yeah, I would really love to have some of those perks. So it's a really good excuse to get that done, I think. What's next? Okay. So I had to sort of turn down some of my Discord chat, my Discord chat's incentives, because they were involving things like watching certain videos on stream, and YouTube can be awfully litigious when it comes to, you know, copyright. So instead of listening to Sticking Out Your Gyat for the Rizzler, I think it would be fun to make my own version of it with Ethereum. I don't know if I mean maybe it's dead, right? I don't know. But I think it would be kind of fun to do a little animation with everyone's VTuber avatars and stuff. So that's something that we could do. This one is also an adaptation of a suggestion, which was just more Prekinji content. And so this one is the molecular biology of cats. So, you know, part of me going through this ordeal of like Prekinji suffering through cholangiohepatitis is this idea that, like, as a biology researcher, I found it actually pretty amazing at how little research there is about the biology of cats. And so to cover what we do know about the biology of cats as a stream incentive, I think would be kind of fun as well. This should be a punishment. I was considering putting it on the bad wheel, but like I wanted to do it as content and not as like a thing I sing during the lunch break. Unless you all think that it would be better content for me to just sing because like at 3 a.m. this morning I couldn't sleep because I was like I need to figure the lyrics out right now because it won't leave me alone. And I do have a version of this that I've already written, which I think is quite good. Those are words I never thought would come from this channel. Hey, there are firsts for everything, especially when it comes to making content for charity. Okay. So no promises on this because it can be quite involved and I don't want to pressure anybody to actually make this. But Phyte Catgirl outfit, that is that is something that that might be a thing, which would be very fun. And then Phyte Idol outfit, which is also something that, again, no pressure. It's just a fun idea that may or may not happen, but that's what this brainstorming is for, right? So chat, I want to turn it back onto all of you to see if you have some milestone ideas for me in particular. Are there any goals for my content or any challenges that that you would like for me to do as community incentives? Remember, there's still the bad wheel and the good wheel that are coming up, and those are more low stakes things that I can do right away, whereas this is like stuff that I have to really rack my content brain and design and craft. And don't worry, like, if you like, don't feel bad about making a suggestion because I just might not take it. Like, I won't be offended at any suggestion. I just might not choose to do it depending on if it makes sense for my content. Or if you have no suggestions, let me know what you think about this current list. Are there ideas here that you prefer, or ideas that you would maybe not want to see as a milestone, just because there are only a finite number of these that we could have? This is just sort of to get the idea juices flowing. I just want to keep Prekinji picks. We can definitely have those in the molecular biology of cat stream for sure. Not sure about pricing, but would gifting memberships be on the table? Ooh, yeah. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and add that to the milestone suggestion. Oh, sorry, there's one more. There's one more suggestion. This is actually two more. I totally forgot about these. So it's 12 hours, which is like insane. So I think that a reasonable charity milestone would be something like a stream highlights for those of you who don't want to sit through 12 hours of me yapping. So that's very reasonable. I think that's very possible to do. And then a proper Phyte glioblastoma video. So I've been getting more confident in finding the tone that I want to strike in my more serious videos. I don't know if you could tell, but like when I cover a pathogen, it is more serious. I do make a conscious effort to not be as jokey, which is why I like interleaving the pathogens with the non-pathogenic content, just because like I feel like it could be funnier in like the microbiome video or the archaea video, right? But in proper things that affect people's lives negatively, I tend to be a lot more serious. So I'm warming up to the idea of doing an actual video for something like glioblastoma, especially because I will have done so much research for this stream that it won't be that much more work to script out a video like this. I can also like get an idea for your reaction to the research to see which ideas you all like better. Cat videos, yeah. We could throw up we can cram that presentation. That's basically like it's a secret Purkinje slideshow, but it's branded like a biology video. That would be kind of fun. Okay, so we will add to that gifting membership. I think I really like that. Oh gosh, what happened there? Oh, that's going to be an issue. Let me do something real quick. Apparently, if you add to a PowerPoint slide, it will reset the status of the animations, which I do not want. So why don't we go ahead and, for some of those future slides, let's make a copy and delete the animations, because that is not what I wanted to happen. But while I'm doing that, please go ahead and give me more sort of donation incentive ideas. Or do you think this is like a pretty good list? Like, I think this list has enough items for certain to like be a complete thing, especially because, you know, I don't really know how much to expect to raise from a stream like this, so I don't even know how many of these will hit. But yeah. What else you got? A biology jokes tier list. That's fun, and that's something that we can do actually during some of the breaks. So let's go back and let's go ahead and add that one. I do like that one. Biology jokes tier list. Okay, delete these animations so that it doesn't reset everything. Biology jokes tier list. That's fun. Good idea. A cell biology board game. Oh, review of cytosis. Oh, is that a real game? Oh, that's fun. Okay. Something to do with cytosis. That's interesting. I wonder if we could actually play it with Board Game Simulator. That would be a cool incentive to do. Physical Phyte prints. Phyte merch. There's an idea. Probably something pretty simple though, because what's going on? Okay, there we go. It'd probably have to be something pretty simple, because I'm not ready to like have a plush out, but maybe the beginning of Phyte merge would be kind of fun. Phyte drawing stream. So the thing is, Toxo does all of my art, but you can see how bad I am at art in comparison. Firebrand cotton balls, I love that. That's so cute. Best biology adjacent anecdotes. Let's add that here. Let's call that biology anecdotes. Yeah, that's good. That's good. By drawing stream, yeah, we'll add that. That way you can really understand why I don't do the art for my channel. All right. This is a pretty good list. If you have any more suggestions that you think of later, you can go ahead and drop them in the Google form that I have in the description for this video. But yeah, this is a pretty good start. I'm liking this. All right. Okay, so where do we go next? All right, so good wheel suggestions. Okay, so the idea of a good wheel, I think, is pretty lame in terms of like, we all want the streamer to suffer, right? But there's a way to do it where the streamer is doing something that is objectively good and still suffering. And I think that's, the joy of the good wheel. Or, you know, in this conversation with my community, I might find out that you're all very wholesome and genuinely want happiness for me, in which case that would also be very cool. But here are some ideas that I've come up for myself. So positive affirmations. This was, I think, auto suggestion. But I also, from that idea, I thought of like role play, like doing some kind of short improv role play, which I mean, I don't know if you want that from me, but like that's certainly something that I can do, question mark. Like you get a good grade role play. I don't know if that's like weird, but that's certainly an idea that can happen. A superfood smoothie. I think this is a very fun idea. It's to take I don't know, like any BuzzFeed list of the hottest superfoods of 2021 or something, and then blend them all into a smoothie so that it is objectively good for my health, but also potentially a miserable experience. I think that's a pretty fun idea. And then we have, of course, physical challenges: push-ups, sit-ups, burpees, planks. These are renewable, of course, so every spin might add to the total counter that I have to do for that break, which will be kind of interesting considering I'm planning to eat during the breaks too. This one, I love this one. Give Prekinji a smooch. This one's also renewable, right? And then the more we spin that wheel, the more smooches she'll get. Whether or not she consents to receiving those smooches, we'll find out. Although she's mellowed out in her older age, right? So I don't think I've told this anecdote before, but you know, when Toxo and I went searching for a cat in the shelters, there was a personality note description that Prekinji came with, which was, you know, she's slow to warm up, but when she becomes attached, she becomes very attached. And I was like, oh, that's just like me for real, where I am, I think, a very difficult person to befriend if we are strangers and we don't have anything in common. But if I kind of learn, if I learn how to love, if we kind of learn how to get along, I do think that I am quite affectionate. And so at first she was very standoffish and very afraid of everybody and everything and very asocial, but over the years she's gotten a lot more attached to Toxo and I, which I think is like the best kind of cat. I know every cat owner thinks their cat is the best, but like to me, I love a cat that loves me back because I want to feel like I earned that love, as opposed to a cat that loves everybody. Sorry to you all who have cats that are like that, but I am unapologetically a big fan of my cat, as you can imagine. So I'm definitely a fan of doing Prekinji rewards for goodwill. Or maybe we could give her like treats and stuff too, some dental treats or some catnip. That'd be fun. Yeah, so any suggestions for the good wheel that are sort of in this vein, chat? Any kind of good for my health kind of suggestions that you might want for me to do? Go ahead and take a sip of my water while you all give that a thought. We would talk about something you like for X minutes for the mental health. Yes, it might come as no surprise, but this is essentially the best reward that you can give an academic, soapbox on something. Yes, I love that. I love that. That's so good. That's such a good suggestion. Yeah, I sometimes I feel bad for Toxo, because she has to be on the receiving end of the thing that I am currently fixating on. But now I can make it into content, and especially content for charity, which is very, very exciting. So that's a great suggestion. Welcome to White Potato. New to the stream here. What did I miss? So we talked about suggestions for a charity stream that I am planning to do in January to fight glioblastoma. I will be donating, or not donating. The money doesn't go through me. It actually goes directly from the donate button on YouTube directly to St. Jude's Research Hospital through the giving function on YouTube. So 100% of your proceeds actually does reach the charity in question. St. Jude's Hospital is ranked basically like 4 out of 4 stars on Charity Navigator, and not only do they help sort of American families with their cancer treatments for their children, but also they're expanding to international countries. That's, you know, by definition, but other countries outside of the US, providing low to middle income countries with free access to cancer treatments. And so we already talked about setting up some milestone rewards. So if you have some extra ideas, you can feel free to put them in the Google form linked in the description below. Now we're talking about Goodwill suggestions. These are suggestions that are basically incentives tied to single donation amounts. So every time I get a donation of 10 US dollars, I will spin the Goodwill to do one of these 6 things on the PowerPoint slide here. So if you have other suggestions for things that I could do that are technically good for me, feel free to suggest them. I often find that like this category, I think, is a lot harder to come up with ideas for, just because streamer doing something nice is not as like content pilled. Also, I'm not sure if I said hi to you, Clockwork, but welcome to the stream. Hello. Yeah, bit blank on ideas. No worries, no worries. Yeah, the Goodwill is tough. I think the Goodwill is pretty tough. Maybe we'll come back to this later as we go on with the final category of suggestions, which is the bad wheel. So this is pretty much a ripoff of Cideray's Suffer-a-thon in its entirety, because I think I took a lot of my initial ideas from her Suffer-a-thon. If you don't know, Cideray, a couple months back was doing a subathon while she was working on her PhD thesis, where she was spinning something called the Suffer-a-thon, which was just peak cinema, I think. Really, really great stuff. Splits, or stretching that isn't going to hurt you but is also uncomfortable. I actually love that because I am, to Toxo's surprise every time, very inflexible. So let's do some yoga. Some yoga. I won't hurt myself. I'm fully aware of where my limits are, but I am very inflexible as a human being, so that actually would be good for me and also not very pleasant. Thank you, Merkala. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so bad wheel suggestions. Again, so a lot of these that I had gotten from my Discord community, I couldn't put on here because they were like copyright nebulous, so I've adapted some of them here. Hot food, really like hella spicy food. Yeah, so I am someone, I would not describe myself as a masochist. I am more of someone who likes to test the boundaries of my physical capabilities. So I actually am quite good with spicy food. There are limits though. My hard cutoff is the Taquito 1 chip challenge, or anything that is in that level of spice, right? So I don't remember the blue one that the blue one that led to the death of a couple of people. I did have that one, and that was my limit. I will not do that again because that felt like, if I were to do it again, could result in permanent damage. Bulldog ramen, it's got to be harder than bulldog ramen. I eat bulldog ramen for pleasure. So anything higher than bulldog ramen do we have here? Goodwill, you could eat raw onions or ginger or something like that. Healthy but not very tasty. I've done both, and those are not quite as extreme as, you know, I want to provide very genuine reaction. I don't want to play up anything just for the sake of content. I'm like nuts because I'm a scientist, right? And my own physical limitation is already something that I've tested quite thoroughly. I could blend in those onions and ginger to the superfood smoothie that I have in the Goodwill, so that's something. Are stretches Goodwill or bad wheel? I think Goodwill. Good for me, but bad for my bad for my pain receptors, we'll say. So bulldog ramen is in line, but I am way too good at spicy food for bulldog ramen to be a reasonable challenge. Hot ones challenge, yeah, hot ones challenge. So in that spicy food challenge, I could definitely go ahead and just buy Da Bomb, or whatever the hottest hot one sauce is. I think that would actually be quite good. So we'll make it a little more specific. It's actually kind of funny because in graduate school we had this idea of doing journal club, where we would do like actually back then it was hot pepper gaming, eat a habanero and do journal club, and I think that would be kind of fun to do. Hot pepper gaming / hot ones spiciest one. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. The hot ones challenge, I think, definitely fits in line with the goal and the spirit of these suggestions. Where does a ghost pepper fall on this? It depends on what the Scoville rating on the, again, because again, the hot chip that company made literally killed people. So as long as ghost peppers are not near that level, I think I'll be okay. Because eating a raw habanero, which I've done before, not the worst, but I understand a ghost pepper is much worse than a raw habanero. So ghost pepper might be the way to go, I think. So I'll just go ahead and add that as a note. Ghost pepper. Yeah. So I'll have to do a little reading on that. I hear something about a Discord server. Sounds interesting. Yeah, so let me grab the Discord link one more time. I don't want to make my Discord super public. I typically save it for the streams just because, you know, you can't really control who watches you on, you know, through the algorithm, basically. But, you know, my streaming community, I'm pretty happy to share the Discord link with. So go ahead. And if you are interested, there the link is. What else we got? Are ghost peppers obsolete in the modern spice metagame? I don't think they're obsolete. I still think that they, like, having eaten a habanero, which is already pretty hot, it's not that it was easy, but a habanero, I was not like freaking out the way that some people freak out on hot pepper gaming. But a ghost pepper is probably bad enough where I would probably suffer. And here I am not being able to handle the medium national brand salsas. You can do it. I have personally witnessed Toxo's spice tolerance go from essentially like baby mode to better than me, depending on the actual pepper. It just requires gradual adjustment. Yeah, I do believe in you. Day, welcome to the stream, by the way. The lethal peppers on the Paki trip. I actually don't know how to pronounce it, but the one chip challenge with the Carolina Reaper and the Naga Viper, which were 1 million. Okay, yeah. So ghost pepper is not as bad as those insane peppers. So, Sichuan hot pot, that's like a good wheel suggestion for me. I am very down. Oh, but like a mouthful of Sichuan peppercorns, that could be interesting. I like that idea. Mouthful of, because again, I'm a little freak. So Sichuan peppercorns, mouthful. Go great with my lunch. All right. I've eaten a slice of scorpion pepper. It was very hot, but there's definitely hotter sauces. It was scorpion pepper I grew. I don't know if it was nearly as hot as it should have been. There might be variation because there are ranges for these peppers. They are, of course, biological organisms. So I'm wondering if you were on the lower end. But from what I understand, even the lower end is like pretty insane. Okay, so the other idea that this is like directly from Cideray's Suffer-a-thon is a ChatGPT wrap. So chat suggests the topic. It can be something like, I think I had a Discord suggestion that was like flat earth. So if you want me to like wrap a flat earth thing composed by ChatGPT, that's certainly something that I can do. It would kill part of my soul to have my voice attached to flat earth lyrics, but there you go. Embarrassing anecdotes. I can think of at least 2, but that's certainly something. Eat bad Brussels sprouts. So this is in line with the whole like gross food kind of challenge. It could go in with the superfood smoothie, but I don't really know if Brussels sprouts can be marketed as a superfood, so that's why I have this slightly separately. So anything else on the bad wheel suggestion? I think the interest in the bad wheel for me personally is that I have been so like not even doing it for content, so like adamant about testing my physical limitation that I do want to genuinely give you a good real reaction to something that pushes my limits, because I, you know, for science, right? I know these things about myself. Brush your teeth and eat an orange only once. That's great. Have I tried that? I actually don't remember. That sounds like something that I have tried, but since I don't remember that experience, that's absolutely something that can go on here. Brush teeth and eat an orange. Bad wheel looking pretty bad now, I'd say. Electric shock. Okay. Depending on the price of that, I could see that as a thing. I actually have done this before in terms of like there are like gag gifts that you can buy. I'm pretty sure that I've tested the gag gifts on me. So like we could do like a shock collar thing, which would be kind of interesting. What else? What else? Cut an onion while trying not to cry. So I believe my knives are actually sharp enough for that to mostly be okay. Although I could cut it with a butter knife. No, brushing your teeth and having an orange. What about your enamel? That's true. If you didn't know, RFK in the US is thinking about removing the fluoride from our drinking water, which is a little unfortunate. You could argue that we might not need fluoride in our drinking water anymore. But there might not be enough fluoride in our American toothpaste to make up for the dearth of fluoride in our drinking water. I mean, the drinking water research is actually quite interesting and quite nuanced in terms of like figuring out the impact of fluoride. But what I will say is that there's, I think, not a compelling argument to not have fluoride in the water. And if it does appear that fluoride is in fact helpful, I will be irreversibly damaging my teeth. Reading the original retracted anti-vax paper. Ooh. So here's the thing about that, is that I've already read the anti-vax paper because I was planning to do it for content, for pre-Phyte the Neutrophil content. And the thing about that is that it's not as interesting as you think it would be, because if that report were actually not faked, it would be eyebrow raising. It wouldn't, of course, it doesn't stand up to be like, oh, this is a national emergency, we need to do something right away, because the original report was basically reporting on case studies in one particular location. The egregious damage done by that original anti-vax paper was in the fact that the data were manipulated. We'll put it that way. So I've been actually avoiding talking about it because that becomes a journalism problem and not a science problem, right? That's not a problem of did science fail? That's a problem of like the media blowing up. I mean, it's also the journal, right? The journal, the New England Journal of Medicine should not have, was it NEGAM? I forget exactly what journal it was originally published in, but what is known is that the journal took a lot of flack for publishing it, which I think they rightly should have. But like, it's not an instance where like, oh, the researchers did their analysis wrong. It's more like the stuff was made up and painted in the worst possible light, and then the media had a firestorm. So maybe we could talk about that as like milestone content, maybe. Are you a knife enthusiast, or do you just keep your tools in good shape? I cook very frequently, so making sure that my knife is sharp is a quality of life improvement and a safety feature, right? So I actually cook basically every day because so I grew up in a culture where like side dishes were plentiful, and I grew up in a household with grandparents, and so I grew up very spoiled because I had grandparents. So I had additional adults who could do a lot of cooking, and so I grew up eating basically different things every day, and like I can't meal prep. I get sick of eating the same thing for 3 meals straight, and so I do end up cooking a new thing every day, and so it's important to me. It's not like I'm a tool guy or a knife guy. It's just that like, because I cook so frequently, if my knives are blunt, it let's say it increases the risk that I hurt myself. So that's why I keep the knives sharp. 5 minutes on a merry-go-round. I do not have a merry-go-round. Also, I like, despite these like food challenges, I actually don't want to vomit on stream. I think that would be a little too dank for my kind of content. Admit to autoimmune crimes, like a satirical YouTube apology. Oh, see, that might be a really good donation incentive. I'll put it on the bad wheel suggestion, though. I think I'll put it on the bad wheel suggestion because, Oh no, that's really good. I mean, I might just I don't know. Okay, let's put that. Okay, I'll put it on the milestone suggestion because I had a really good idea, or not, it wasn't my idea. It was Toxo's idea actually, because Toxo comes up with the funniest ideas um, for the next April Fool's video. But I'm kind of leaning away from doing it because I'm afraid people will take the joke too seriously. But admitting to autoimmune crimes, that's good. I like that. Let me be held accountable for my crimes. Okay, so I've added that actually to the um, milestone suggestion list. That's very funny. All right. Do we have any other suggestions in the chat for the bad wheel? And of course, if you come up with other suggestions, you can go ahead and put them in the Google form down in the link posted in the description. All right. All right. So while you are sort of thinking about other suggestions for me to do, how much do you think we can actually raise? So I plan on matching at least $100. Actually, I'll change this to $110 because I got a super chat on this stream, a very kind super chat for $10, but I don't want to make any money off of the charity, so I will add that directly to the match instead. I mean, yeah. So I know that Bryn Penrose just raised the equivalent of $6,000 for like a mental health charity, actually just this week. And like, if I were to extrapolate linearly, that would give a certain number, somewhere in the 500 range. So that would be like my baseline. And I'm kind of wondering how you all feel about like our chances of hitting that like $500 baseline. Like what's the vibe check here? Do you think like 500 is like too ambitious, not ambitious enough? What's the like vibe here? I think 500 is about kind of like, especially with my match, I think it is obtainable. It might be kind of challenging though. With the 12-hour stream, like depends on how much you advertise. So I'm planning to do a YouTube short to advertise. I'm also planning to do a video so that I can be on both YouTube subscription feeds for this stream. I'm planning on like shamelessly asking my VTuber friends to spread the word as well. So yeah, and Reddit and stuff like that. But for me, those avenues of advertising, I'm not entirely sure how effective they are. Really, my best chance at advertising the stream is through the algorithm, which is kind of unfortunate because you never know what the algorithm is going to do. I'm also planning to release the Ebola video before the announcement. So I've got like a deadline coming up so that I can juice up the algorithm on my channel so that the next video that I publish is hopefully pushed out to more people as well. So yeah, I don't know. If I just go off of like my streaming numbers over the course of 12 hours, if I do some quick math, 500 seems like a pretty nice amount. I think I would be quite happy to have raised $500 for, you know, my first charity stream, because I do think that like I think that this is a nice thing to do maybe yearly, you know, in the vein of like AGDQ, Games Done Quick, you know, their whole fundraiser. And, you know, making use of who I am as a person. You know, I'm not a great gamer, although I can speedrun Celeste. I have a sub-hour time, which isn't like anywhere near competitive for anything, but sub-hour for a very challenging game, I think is pretty nice. But since that is not my primary skill set, I wanted to fundraise off of something that I am good at, I would say. I think that is a very reasonable goal to start with. Yeah, I think so too. So I think 500 is pretty reasonable. Try Reddit. People love charity. Yeah, I definitely will try Reddit. Unfortunately, I can't quite seem to crack the like Reddit code. I think there are other people that are much better at using Reddit to advertise than I am. So that's why my hopes are kind of not as high as I would like them to be, especially because like, I don't know, let me put up a quick poll just for Um, I do these polls occasionally to kind of find out where my viewers come from. How did you find me? Algorithm? Or literally anywhere else? So I want to get a sense for it because, like, the people that are most likely to tune in are the people that are already watching me on stream, right? So, like, I want to know, and I have been like doing PR and social media and stuff like that, and I like to think that I do them pretty regularly, because it is like another thing to do as a content creator on my own. Yeah. Oh, okay. So turns out, so far, initial data, that's actually surprising because I imagined that the algorithm would be very dominant in terms of where people would find me from. But the fact that there is a chunk that found me through other means is pretty encouraging, I think, and makes that other venue of advertising a little more appealing, which is neat. Found you through reading up for an exam and have been loving it since. Thank you so much, Target Dummy. What exam, if I may ask? I actually love the fact that there are students in my chat because I think it's cool. That I think my role is to continue engagement with science, not necessarily to uh, teach you anything, but if you have more positive experiences with science, maybe you will stay, in whatever field that you want to be staying in. Immunology, aha, very fun. Anybody who has taken an immunology class probably ends up knowing more immunology than I do. It's one of my most insecure points that, like, I do this immunology material, but I'm always like, God, I wish I took an immunology class. That sounds very, very cool. I found you through Googling microbiology content creators. I know you say you aren't an actual microbiologist, but Google thought you were close enough. That's awesome. I love that I came up under that. I was an amateur microbiologist before I was an amateur immunologist, actually. I loved my rotation in a bacteria lab. The lab that I rotated in was studying bacterial persistence, which is different than resistance and something that I've talked about before. But the idea that bacteria can go into like a cryo state and just shrug off drugs independent of their own genes. That's pretty wild. Bacteria are so cool. Your channel matches with my YouTube algorithm too. Yeah, I imagine. All right, so I'll go ahead and end the poll there. So 85-15 split is enough for me to want to go pretty hard on my alternate advertising venues, just because I do think that is a significant chunk and I can contribute. So the other thing that I wanted to sort of test real quick is, am I your first VTuber? This is something that I'm very curious about because, I do advertise very heavily in VTuber spaces, and I feel like it's very hard for me to get traction, particularly in those spaces. I found you because I had to do a presentation for school. Interesting. I wonder what presentation you. Oh, were you the chatter that was doing prions as a presentation? I think I vaguely remember a comment like that. For sister cells. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wonder often, like, because I never took a microbiology class formally, how much of the stuff that I talk about is covered in a basic microbiology education. It's very curious. No, but I also had to do a presentation on prions. Oh, very, very cool. Yeah, yeah, the prion video, I'm very glad that it did as well as it did, because my ego probably could not take the hit if it didn't do very well. Because I was like, dude, people love prions. That's something that I've learned a lot about when just like being in biology, is that whenever prions are brought up, it is always met with this sense of reverence and interest. And I was very happy to be able to provide what I think is the best prion video on YouTube. Best by my own metric of being like as close as you can get to hearing from like prion researchers. Because with the target video as well, like a lot of it is like pop sci, which is good and fine, but for me, it's got to hit a little harder. That's my niche, is if you want stuff that hits a little harder. I have never found 3D anime tubers to appeal to me, so having a little 2D cell to look at is more appealing. That's always so interesting to me, and it really does solidify this like conflict that I've had internally about if I should be a normal VTuber, right? Because, if I'm being quite honest, the reason I think I don't appeal to the average VTuber viewer is because I'm not an anime being, and so there's very little reason to give me a second look when I am in those spaces. So being in between a traditional YouTuber content creator and a VTuber has been very interesting and challenging in certain ways. But I do think that Toxo's intuition of like, well, you're your own thing. Like, you are not someone who would fit very well in either universes just because you're kind of a weirdo. And at first I was very self-conscious of like, oh, I don't know, like, would people even want this? So it's very kind and very nice to hear that I have that kind of support. You're oddly a perfect content creator for me because you bridge my science interest and VTuber interest. Yeah, I'm very glad to hear that. And the whole like ethos of V Theorem is that I believe there are more people who maybe don't even know that they want that kind of thing yet. That is what I am staking my claim to greatness on. This idea of greatness that I've returned to is that like I live my life striving for some vague definition of greatness, and if that means betting it all on science VTubing as being a thing, then so be it. So be it. Yeah, I didn't know you were a VTuber at first. Yeah. It is a pretty obscure, untested content strategy, but I think that does, to some degree, appeal very well to my scientific proclivities, right? So this idea that this is untrodden space, and this idea of like, oh, no one has done this and made it really big, was very encouraging. Of course, I did end up getting proven wrong because there are actually some big science VTubers out there. None that are really exactly like me, but the more that I explore the space, the more I realize that other people have been doing this. I think Uto's lab comes to mind as being quite a big content creator who does, I'll say, experimental content. Not exactly in the vein that I do it, but certainly very interesting thumbnails come out of that channel, basically. Your persona comes off as being less weird. I haven't thought about it enough to come up with an explanation exactly why. That's interesting to me, and I would love to know a little more about why you think that. Less weird than whomst? Who are we comparing to? Are VTubers here like specifically the corporate form, or is it more generally people representing themselves with some fun avatar while they do some other activity? So in terms of big discoverability, like the biggest people are involved in corporations, but there are also a lot of independent VTubers who have also made it quite big. So I'm not entirely sure, Marlon, what your question comes off as. Oh, like, are VTubers here like in my chat? I think in my chat it's mostly indies. I haven't gotten any like corporate recognition. Too small for that, not enough clout yet. Always something to aspire to. Really bad mystery science theater 3000 film on the good/bad wheel. I'm gonna have to explain a little more about what that means, because I can't actually show footage because of copyright and demonetization on YouTube. I love how you didn't do an anime human. I think it might be the choice that's choice exhaustio. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I get the vibe. So it's been played out a lot. I think is the what you're trying to get at. I'd say that like I personally find that there is a lot of room in VTuber design that still makes it very interesting to look at. For example, if you just look at my compatriots in V Theorem, I love all of their designs. Like just to name, like if you pay close attention to Cidere's design, her character sheet, I love the side patterns that she's embroidered on her lab coat. There are a lot of really nice, cool design choices. Nep's design is also very coherent and lovely looking. The idea of being a carnivorous plant VTuber is great. Mylan has a very interesting Mothman-inspired design, which I also very much love. It's a very eerie, kind of striking look, and Z's choice to have the cosmic background radiation as her dress is also like, I think, just incredibly fun. Uh, but I do think that like not everybody wants to watch an anime person on stream, on screen explaining things. Um, and I totally get that. It can be quite bizarre unless you were steeped in this culture from when it exploded in 2020. Maybe something with the uncanny valley. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I, in debating as to whether or not I should be human or not, I had this idea that like there's, I would say, an unescapable pressure to make VTuber designs conventionally attractive, because that's just what garners clicks. And I don't really feel like an anime hot man. That just didn't feel like me. Although there is a design for a human Phyte that is under wraps right now, that does not take the angle of anime hot man. But because anime hot man is very prevalent in male VTuber design, it's just I don't feel like I belong in that anime hot man body. So a cell does feel, and I can admit this after internally struggling with the choice to be who I am. I can't say that I'm quite at peace. This feels a lot more like who I am as a person than anime hot man. You also have good pacing. Thank you very much. Uh, yeah, I've actually had comments that decry how often I live stream because live streams are a lot slower. But I just think it's different audiences, right? Like I want to do both content. It's not my living to do this, right? Like I don't. My whether or not I have bread on the table is not dependent on my YouTube strategy. So I am afforded the luxury of doing this as something that I find to be of great personal importance. The idea of communicating deep nuance insights that I can't do in video format, to an audience that is not that are not graduate students. I mean, if you are a graduate student in biology and you are in chat, of course, I love and appreciate you, but to give the opportunity for people who are not going to have the opportunity to go to graduate school or do not have it as a priority to go to graduate school, to get some of the graduate school experience has been a very rewarding journey. And I will stubbornly continue to do it, even though if you look at my analytics, I actually lose a couple subscribers every time I stream. It's very, very interesting. But for the stream watchers, I'm glad that you have all continued to stick around. About your non-human design, I would always chuckle at the V Theorem Gen 1 eye banner. Yeah, that was done on purpose because it's just two pairs of eyes and it's just your genetic material. Yeah, I came up with that. I believe I came up with that idea, because the superposition is just really, really striking. And I think that it also kind of makes it a little hard to do group art of us because I can come across as like a mascot character because of the relative difference in design and size. But I've been coming up with ways to work around that kind of idea. But the eye banner thing, for those of you who haven't seen it, I wonder if I can quickly. Oh, did Phi keep his files organized challenge? If I can show that off, it's on Twitter. Where would I have put it? V Theorem folder, probably. And where are the I swear I have them. Ah, I do have them. Great. Go ahead and make that an image that I can show off. Eye banners. And I'll go ahead and put in that image. So V Theorem folder. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's huge. But you can also see at this size the size that are hidden inside his eyes, which I think are really, really fun. So if you haven't seen the promotional art for V Theorem, this is it. This eye banner of us, Gen 1, OG Gen 1, side array on top, me in the middle, and then Nep on the bottom. And I do really, really enjoy how this eye banner looks. I think it's great. Very, very nice art done by, oh, I forget the name. In any case, if you go to my Twitter, you can definitely. Oh, Yuffie did the art for the eye banner. Virtual date with hot human Phyte top fundraiser prize. I don't know if you've seen that ProZD TikTok where it's like a TikTok duet and he's explaining some, I don't know, like Magic the Gathering rules or something to someone who looks very disinterested. That could be fun to do. I do like that. That's awesome. Let me go ahead and write that down in the incentives. Under role play, probably role play dating start. And I love kind of like the Undertale vibe of it, like dating non-human characters like you would in Undertale. I think that's great. I love that. That's awesome. Thank you very much, James. For me, you usually stream with a purpose. I don't enjoy jumping onto a vaguely hangout with someone I don't know. You've usually got a topic. That's how I like to hang out too. I've said this in a previous stream where like I never just go to a friend's place and just watch TV with them. To me, that's like the most uncomfortable thing. I'm much better when we're like talking about something. Like I have a friend who is branching out into content creation, and anytime he wants to like come over and talk content strategy, I'm like, please, and then we'll talk hours about it. That's not to say that, and I say this with caution again because I don't want to come off like, oh, the pursuits of the mind are more interesting than idle chatter, in front of a TV screen. I don't think that's true at all. It's just that like I have a complex where I feel like I have to constantly be adding value to everybody around me, which you could argue is maybe not the healthiest mentality to have, but like conversation about a certain topic I think is value add. And I know that like presence of your friends and just hanging out, that's value add too, but like it's so passive that my brain doesn't accept it as being value add. So I feel like I always have to be talking about something. You could just own it and be the mascot character. I mean, that is true, but I want to make clear that I am also a streamer. So it's not just like, for anime people and then they're, you go check them out and then you forget that the mascot character actually streams as well. So I am sort of conscious about that possibility. Good night to you, Gallo. Well, thank you for dropping by the stream. I'm gonna go ahead and be right back while I turn on the light. It is getting dark here. Also, Kinji's got to eat kind of soon. Let me go ahead and end that poll. So about half of my audience looks like I am not their first VTuber, which is actually more than I would expect. About half I say is it's more like about a third. So I'll be right back as I turn on the light. All right, and I am back. I am no longer streaming in the dark dungeon. It gets very, very dark very, very quickly nowadays. You also have good pacing and don't talk like you need an editor to cut out blank space. That's actually interesting because Toxo thinks that I actually leave too much blank spaces in between my sentences. I think I've gotten better at it. I still view someone like Cideray as like being the master at consistent yapping, and I just can't match that level of pace. I think partly it comes from my care. Not to say that Cideray doesn't care, but like as a teacher, I've had to really think very carefully about how to give feedback to certain students. So I'm also like very careful with my language, and I don't seem to be able to get out of the teacher mindset when I talk on stream. Well, partly because I do journal clubs and stuff, but I am. You could describe me as like a say-so VTuber, like a very pure, not lewd or controversial or racy in any kind of way. And part of that is that like managing academic discussion, I want to do it like as my brand. I want to do it in a more like I would in a classroom, basically. Although there's certainly an argument for a more chaotic version of me out there doing the same thing. I think that would be very fun. There's also a difference for me between just hanging around with friends in person and doing something and doing so with someone who you only know parasocially. Yeah, that's also true. Like which it's also kind of interesting because like the conversations I have with chat are not necessarily different in like sort of spirit with the conversations that I have with my friends. It's just that like it can function as both, right? Like I treat chat, I think, like from my perspective, with respect in the sense of like intellectual respect. But because I am doing so with the filter of my presentation, I think that keeps a pretty good relationship between me and the chat, which I think is great. You have a Kira monologue before saying something. Like an internal I just want to live a quiet life in monologue. Yeah, I sometimes do feel conscious of like, oh god, I haven't said anything in like 2 seconds, 2 agonizing seconds, which can be a problem for streamers. But I've gotten a lot better at it, which I was worried that I would not be able to, because when I started streaming I was like, I think I would be good to chat when there is something to chat about. I would not be good at bouncing from topic to topic, but when there is something that I am deeply interested in, I did think at the beginning of my streaming career that if I could just hit that stride, then I would be chill. Unfortunately, because that means that I donate, I assign a lot of my RAM thinking of what to say in those more discussion-y type chats like we're having right now, right? Like that it feels that like I need to speed up, or I need to download more RAM into my brain to make sure that I'm still providing an acceptable streaming experience. Mr. Winter, welcome to the stream. Do I like math? In theory, yes. Although I haven't done math in quite some time. There was actually a little bit of an attempt of me doing math in my Discord where someone in the Discord chat had asked whether or not if you ate a plate full of tuberculosis, if that would be dangerous. And I wanted to calculate how many tuberculosis bacteria would fit in a typical colony. And I started to try, and then I realized very quickly that it looked like I needed to do some calculus, which I haven't done in years. So I'm like not great at math. But the thing is that my dad was really good at math. My dad actually has quite a lot of math education and tried very hard to impress upon me an appreciation for math, but I think pushed me a little too hard as a kid, and then I did biology in some ways to rebel, but I ended up falling in love with biology as a result. That being said, as an adult, going back to read my father's work, it is genuinely very interesting, because, you know, like father, like son, he was also an academic for a short period of time. Welcome to the stream, Z. Welcome, welcome. So hype for the charity stream. Thank you very much. Z is our newest member of Ethereum. So is Mylan. Z is a physics VTuber. So if you like math, Mr. Winter, why don't you go ahead and check out Z, who is doing a stream tomorrow. I don't remember what time. I also forgot to put your thumbnail in my PowerPoint, unfortunately. But basically, Z, if you could actually link your stream in the chat, that would actually be really great. I'm brainstorming some ideas for the wheel. Please be nice. Although you kind of already got a sneak peek at the Rizzler song that I had written the lyrics for. Don't spoil the lyrics, but just she already knows that it's there. Z, please drop a link to your stream in the chat. I'm sure people will be interested. So math, I think I've described this before on stream, and I've mentioned it on Z's stream, that I feel physics envy. Dude, the beginning of Oppenheimer with the molecular view, and that kind of romanticization of physics. I was so jealous. I was like, oh my god, physics is so cool. But I'm a dumb biologist, and I cannot comprehend the maths required to appreciate physics. I say that only half jokingly, I would say. and so why do I say that I have like physics / math envy, or / like why does any biologist say that they have physics and math envy? Well, it could be a couple of different reasons, right? Experiments in physics and math are generally not quite as plagued by experimental variability as something as messy as life, right? And then, my compatriots Sidere and Myelin might feel the opposite, where they have human research subjects and they're even messier than molecular biology subjects. So, we're all looking at each other towards the math, being like, dang, I'm so jealous of the data that you can produce. But another reason why I have this envy for math and physics is because some of the most elegant and beautiful intellectual work done by humanity, I think, is in those fields, right? So if you look at something like, what is it, Euler's identity? Z, you can help me out here if I've gotten that wrong. Something like Euler's identity, stemming from math, is something that has so much aesthetic symmetry, and that's not something that is found in life at that pure of a level, right? So e to the pi I equals -1, yeah, Euler's identity, something like that. I always look at as something that is born, you could argue, is something that is born from the mind of a human, because I'm not entirely sure that it has a practical purpose, although you math heads in chat can tell me. But the fact that a human is able to link so many fundamental constants of our universe is an achievement that I almost view in a kind of religious kind of light, right? Where as like life, I love biology. Don't get me wrong, I love biology, but there is a level of perfection that you can achieve in physics and math that will never be true of biology, because life is messy. I do think that messiness gives biology its character as an academic subject, right? Like the fact that biology and life is so messy, is so tragic and storied over the course of evolution, that it gives us this incredible narrative. And if I'll, take a stand for my own subject, I think the narrative of biology is unmatched, because I am a biologist, so of course I have that bias. But in terms of envy, the perfection and beauty of physics and math is something that I have to acknowledge that is something that does not happen in biology to that degree. Variability is so fun. That's how discoveries can happen. Yeah, that's why I will still be, even if I had the brain of a physics or a mathematician, I would still choose biology because of the story, because of the journey. But that being said, I still look over and I'm still like, man, I wish there was something as elegant in the life sciences that I could point to, but I don't think I can. I don't think I can. Yeah. The more general form of e to the I theta can describe rotation fairly nicely. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that Euler's identity had a practical purpose beyond just being what appears to be like the code of life in a weird way. Oh, by the way, one of the questions that I submitted for Z that she will make an attempt to answer is the nature of virtual particles. So that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. I've actually used virtual particles as a plot point in my D&D campaign, which I think is very fun. And you get all sorts of that crazy sci-fi imagination, all that kind of stuff in physics. It's just very, very cool. And I'm very glad to be working with someone who can explain that kind of thing to me. Yeah, quantum mechanics and all that stuff. That kind of almost feels like magic to a biologist, to a simple-minded folk like me. But in that way, it does incur wonder. And that is very important in the art of science communication, right? And is the application of wonder. Have you ever worked on any biomedical research projects? If so, could you give us an example? If not, what would be something you'd like to research? So I did 6 years of a PhD program and then dropped out because COVID happened and stopped basically shipping of material. And I didn't want to stay in graduate school for 8 years, which is what my cohort had to do. I was like, I'm not interested in graduate school for 8 years. So I decided to just do what I wanted to do all along, which is to teach. So I don't know what your definition of biomedical research is. Certainly the biology research that I did do had medical implications, because what biology experiment doesn't have medical implications? In terms of providing you with an example, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty hard to dox in terms of my field, which was so... Yeah, I don't think you'll be able to find me exactly, but basically my research was in identifying the role and function of certain immune proteins in the brain. So longtime chatters have already heard this spiel, but I'm happy to give it every time because I think it's so interesting. For a long time, it was thought that the brain was immune privileged. In fact, I even mentioned it in my rabies video. That's just the prevailing attitude, but the attitude is being overturned at a rapid rate because of the blood-brain barrier being impenetrable to immune cells as far as we know, and the fact that immune proteins are generally expressed either not at all in the brain or at very low levels. There was this idea that, the immune system just doesn't work in the brain. But now we know that the immune system does work in the brain, and not only is it doing things like, the same thing that it does elsewhere in the body, which is to manage infection and damage, but it also has neurological effects. So if you didn't know, the glia, the supporting cells in your brain, use immune proteins to actually chew up extra synapses that your brain makes. So, the second that you're born with way more connections between your neurons than you need to function. And so part of the job of the immune system is to make sure that you have the correct number of synapses, not too many and not too little. So my job in graduate school was learning more about what the immune system was doing in the brain. I can summarize it as such. If not, what would be something you would like to research? What I would like to research is I would love to have finished my PhD. There are so many questions that I have left that I never got to explore myself that I would love the answers for. So it's a cop-out answer, but just like more things about how the immune system works in the brain would be lovely. And of course, like, the immune system in the brain is becoming a much more important part of our research as a whole because of things like Zika showing up in the brain and COVID, and maybe even bird flu, which could be of extreme importance to the world in the upcoming couple of years. Glia, the star of the charity stream. That's one way you could describe. That's one way you could describe the glia. That's for sure. That is one way of describing the glia. I remember hearing the microglia being quite similar to certain immune cells. Yeah, they're called the resident immune cell of the brain. So the brain, the immune system cell that gets to live in the brain, you could say. They do function quite similarly to immune system cells. All right. So do I have any other slides on here, or are we like chill with this? I think that's like it, right? Oh, I do have your thumbnail on here, Z. So let me hide the eye banners. So yeah, so Z is doing a late night drive, which I think is a very fun idea for a stream tomorrow. So please go ahead and make sure you follow her. She will be answering questions about physics, math, and all the like, and driving. And I don't really know what that means. But it is very fun. I've actually asked 2 questions, and I don't want to pressure Z with revealing what my second question is, because I don't know if it's going to be easy to answer. Can I talk about that question, Z? Did you have a chance to like see my second question? Is driving a virtual car a promise? Yeah, well, hopefully. So, okay, great. I've gotten permission. So my chat in Discord, we were talking about centrifuges and how they're basically like ballistic missiles and how you should always balance them and how sometimes undergrads don't always do a good job of doing that. But it got me wondering, things in centrifuges can spin very quickly, sometimes up to, I think, 100,000 rotations per minute. And I wanted to know if that was fast enough to make a difference in how the sample that is being rotated in the Eppendorf experiences time, right? Because from what I know about physics is that the faster you get, or the closer you get to the speed of light rather, the more different your experience of time is. Like, your experience of time slows down. But this is, due to my little dummy brain, I wasn't entirely sure if this was strictly speed or if this was velocity, right? Because velocity is a vector, which means it has directionality, and speed is a scalar, which means that it is just a number. Time dilation is negligible, but I'm wondering how negligible. Like, of course, probably even 100,000 RPM is nowhere near enough to make a perceptible difference, but I'm wondering if we could quantify to some degree what order of magnitude time would slow down for an Eppendorf traveling that quickly. I think is interesting to think about. It is negligible, but I would love to hear a number. I think that would be very, very fun. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pivot to chatting about other things. It is negligible in this case. I'll go more into detail in my stream, but there are equations to describe the impact of time dilation. I would love to know. I would love to know what that math looks like. I think it would be a lot of fun to see if we could send an Eppendorf back in time or something, or rather, how fast an Eppendorf would have to spin in order to experience an actual time dilation. I could do some back of the envelope calculations. That would be awesome. That's actually so hype. Like part of the joy of being in V theorem is that, you know, I don't really talk to people outside of my field anymore, and to just have a physicist around is like crazy. So thank you for applying to V theorem, Syzygy. Like that's really awesome. And I got to talk to Sai and Myelin last night into the wee hours about conspiracy theories and stuff, which is just like, you know, those connections I think are very fun to have as someone who is no longer in graduate school, because I miss talking to my peers in other fields back in graduate school, and you don't really get that opportunity to do that after you leave grad school. So part of the selfish reason of me investing in V theorem success is I just want more people with cool interests to talk to. I think it's neat. All right, so something happened this morning. Before I do that, I guess I'll address Mr. Winter's comment. Do you have anything to do with computational biology? I did a computational biology 101 stream with Resta Makurabe, who did computational biology as a part of her training, and that was a very fun stream. I did take a couple of classes in comp bio, but actually Resta might have an issue with me describing what she does as comp bio, because that might not be the appropriate term to use in her case. But the point is that I did take a couple of classes in using programming to attack biological problems. I've actually done a little bit of programming myself. I used it a little bit in my PhD while I was doing it. There's a little side project I did to design a program that would scramble a sequence of RNA, or a sequence of RNA that would lead to a sequence of protein that would exclude certain protein domains, which I thought was very fun and a very good use of my programming education. But I've also used programming to do things like generate a waifu test of my own. So the thing about tests that you can take online is that they're not very complex. I think a meaningful use of a waifu test is you will rate 100 waifus, and each waifu will have a list of attributes. And at the end of taking that test, when you run my program, you learn what your type is, which I thought was also a very good use of my, equally as good of a use of my programming education as developing my scrambler. So the idea was like, you might think you have a type, like, oh, you know, I'm into like, I don't know, maid outfits or something. And so my idea was, is that true? If I were to give you a random sample of the most popular anime characters, what is your actual type? What actual personality traits are you drawn to? What is your actual aesthetic typing? And that was a lot of fun. So roughly 0.000000006 seconds of time dilation for every second for a person for every S for a person at rest. What does S mean? How often do you do these kinds of streams? I try to do them once a week. Again, I want to allay worries of people who have found me through the YouTube algorithm. This is not in lieu of working on video. It's just that, like, when you sit and you edit video all day, it's like not the most exciting thing, and you can burn out. And because it's just me and Toxo doing the videos, you need downtime to sort of refresh your creativity. If you just force yourself to work on something like a creative project, you end up burning out good ideas. And I find that taking consistent breaks and working on 1,000 different side projects actually helps me be funnier and helps the visuals come out better because I end up generating more and more novel ideas. So I try to like stream once a week. In terms of like my 101 series, that can be kind of tricky because I want to order them in a very specific way where I can actually make progress on my overall goals. Stay tuned for Biophysics 101 with Syzygy, by the way. We're still planning that out. Hopefully going to do it at some time either late January or early February. Although that's not really set in stone quite yet, but we do have plans for that in the future, which will be very cool because I love biophysics. I'm very bad at it, but I love learning about it. So stay tuned for that. Do you still have that test? It's unfortunately on a laptop that I don't think works anymore. But for a milestone reward, I could reprogram it and probably get it out sometime this summer. I don't want to stack too many projects up because that will actually take time from my other video projects. But like I don't like own the idea, right? Like basically what I did was I had a long text file where I listed the traits of every popular anime character, and then you take a quiz and you rate them 1 through 10, and at the end of the day each individual trait gets a score, and the highest trait per category gives you your waifu typing. So it would come back with results like you like One-sans with a cold attitude or something something like that. It was extremely degenerate, and it gives you insight into who I actually am as a person beneath the teacher facade. That's the seconds. Gotcha. Thank you. What is biophysics? Oh, not a dumb question at all. So biophysics is a very broad category of biology, and so it's really actually quite hard to describe what biophysics is, but it is essentially to use the language of physics to understand biological processes. So the difference between a biochemist who is more focused on maybe chemical reactions and bonds and forces, a biophysicist gets even more deep into how forces affect biological molecules, right? So for example, are you aware of the molecule kinesin, right? The motor protein. Hopefully you've watched this video because I don't know a single biology student who hasn't watched The Inner Life of the Cell. Kinesin is a motor protein that walks on microtubule railways. So it throws out its feet one after another to actually walk, and that's how it delivers cargo to the various parts of your cells. And a biophysicist would be very interested in measuring the force that the kinesin molecule exerts onto the microtubule. That's something that is very cleanly, I think, in the domain of a biophysicist. I forget exactly what paper I picked for Syzygy and I to cover, but it also has to do with forces, like seeing how forces act within the cell, which I think will be very cool. Because, yeah, biophysics is great. It's just really hard for me personally. Icosahedron biophysics was hard. Radiation calculation, blood flow. Yeah, a lot of math that I was not good at. And my biophysics professor, Toxo, had the same professor. Yeah, we went to undergraduate together. And yeah, the biophysics professor would just stand up and write equations on the board all day, and it would be miserable. It made me really not want to do physics. Because it was just deriving the formulas that we need to apply. The thing is that, like, I think there's a subset of physics professors, and Z, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, because I have a particular bias against physics professors, which is really mean, because my math professors have actually all been fantastic. My physics professors have been a lot harder to get along with. Like, I think physics professors think that students are smarter than they are, because when they have physics students, the physics students kind of get it, right? Like, if you derive a formula in front of a physics student, they are more likely to understand what to do with that derivation than a dummy biologist like me. So watching a man write formulas on the board from the start of class to the end of class did not help. And I went to every office hours. Like, I practice what I preach. One of my pet peeves is that if you are struggling and you don't go get help, then your grade is on you. But if you do get help and you're still not like getting the grade you want, then we can kind of talk about whose like fault it is. But I was there in every office hours genuinely trying very hard, and I still got very little other than the basic ideas. And that appeared to be like a very general quality of just my physics professors, which could be just a reflection of that department in that particular university. So I'd like to hear sort of what your experiences were, especially Z, because you have more experience with physics teachers than I have. I've had not so pleasant experiences. I feel like that's one of the reasons why I started my channel. I feel like there's a lot of stigma and struggles with physics education. I've wanted to help others overcome that. That's awesome. And I love that mission because, yeah, it's a shame that more people don't get into it if the initial approach doesn't click, right? For me, I've wanted to be like a medical doctor my entire life, so I was just gonna deal with how terrible biology education can be because of the goal at the end of the tunnel. Turns out I ended up falling in love with biology in undergraduate because of some very good talks, but not because of class, because class, the way biology education, and this actually shares some pains with physics, is that like, I don't believe that you can understand biology without memorizing a crap ton of information, because you just have to know stuff, and it sucks, especially for people like me with a short memory, right? My working memory is 5, which means if you tell me your phone number, there is a very little chance that I will remember the entire thing. So long sentences, phone numbers, long words, these are all things that are very taxing for me when I read. But I still think that memorization has to be a part of a biology education. That's maybe old school of me, but I believe that because you have to hold all of that information in your brain all at once for a little bit. I'm not saying that you have to memorize for the sake of remembering things for the rest of your life, because that's impossible. There's too much information in biology to remember. But you have to be passingly acquainted with everything in biology, because only then can you find new areas to improve, right? Biology is a story, and you can only innovate within that story if you've caught up with the latest season of biology. You could think of it that way. Similarly, I think formula derivation has to be a part of physics. It's like you can't escape from it because it is so fundamental to understand how the underlying math works. I just think that you have to do a little more to make it approachable. And I'm very glad that there are people like you, Z, who are out there trying to make physics more approachable for other people. Is there something like bioengineering? I actually am now in a department where engineering is our main focus. So if you heard of like engineering viruses to blow up bacteria, that falls under bioengineering. If you've heard of medical devices, that's a slightly different field of biological engineering, but certainly like biological engineering is a burgeoning field. And it's also going to be much more apparent when it comes to innovation within drug discovery, which is going to be a more and more pressing problem as the problems of antibiotic resistance starts to, it's already very, very threatening. But, you know, globalization has led to the proliferation of different pandemics, and so biological engineers, in my opinion, will be the ones to lead the charge into tackling that, as well as things like climate change. I'm very pilled by my department. I'm a very true believer of the mission of our education. I feel like even at the younger years, I've had a lot of friends who were once passionate about physics ending up leaving because of one bad professor they had. Yeah, it can be really tough to like have an interest so thoroughly squashed by a bad teaching experience or bad learning experience, which is why like I've had a lot of bad biology learning experiences as well, which is maybe why like Z and I were like a little similar, because there's I don't know if you feel similarly, but I have a little spite for how I was taught, and so that spite kind of powers me just a little bit. That's a small part of my motivation, is the spite and the feeling that I can do better. Like when somebody does that awful of a job teaching you, there is this sense that like I need to prove that this is not that hard to do. I'm not downplaying how hard it is to be a teacher, but I'm saying that I think it's hard to be a great teacher. I think it's easy to not be a bad teacher. That's what I'll say. Physics is fun when we talk about theory with no math involved. It definitely is. And I think we will try, Z and I will try to keep it more to theory than to math. And then the math people can go ahead and get deeper into it. Something super interesting I learned in biophysics was the mechanism of vesicles of neurotransmitters and how they transmit and how the hydration of molecules works. Yeah, things like that. Like, I remember like point charges being very interesting in biophysics. Like, I loved learning stuff in biophysics. I just couldn't understand how anything actually worked at a mathematical level because that was too hard. I'm glad that that you're also making biology accessible. Yeah, I'd love to make biology more accessible. I think I have an easier job than you, Z. I think physics is much harder to make accessible. So I'm rooting for your mission, and I will continue to support you for your endeavor. I had a bad CS teacher experience and I gave up. Bio, yeah. I lucked out because the undergrad program that I was in had amazing computer science professors. Not all of them were great, but certainly the one that taught us intro to computer science was good enough that I decided that this was a useful tool to keep in my back pocket. It just goes to show that, like, if you have teachers that you really respect and you like, go send them an email. I do this occasionally to keep in touch with the teachers that I've appreciated the most, because let's be real, they don't get paid enough, especially in the US, right? So what powers them is in part the thought that their job means something. So if you give them an occasional update, even to just be like, hey, I'm in a good place in my life, and I just wanted to share that with you because you were an awesome teacher to me, that is worth a lot. Of course, that's not a substitute for putting cash into teachers' pockets, but I'm sure it'll make their life a little better. And so please go show your appreciation with the teachers that have made a good impact on you. The way the Boltzmann thermal energy compares to how strongly molecules grip onto each other really helps give perspective to how much various parts of the cell grip onto each other. I don't remember enough about biophysics to interpret that statement, although maybe Z can help me with that when we plan our biophysics journal club. Yeah, or 101. I don't remember what we settled on, whether or not we were doing 101 or a journal club, but certainly there are ideas that I would like to revisit. Certainly, and Marlon, if you want to provide a little more context for ideas that you find interesting in this field, that's actually going to be very helpful for crafting what it is we decide to cover. Because so far, like, I've been driving the ship because I've been very comfortable in these fields of biology. Biophysics is the first field where I'm not comfortable. So that's going to be an interesting endeavor to piece together something for my audience that's not that's good, in terms of information quality and educational and accessible and interesting. So I have like a short list of things that I find interesting in biophysics. So if you want to contribute what you think is interesting, I would actually really love to hear that so that I can sort of craft a better story. All right. I'll have to leave for now, but thanks for promoting my stream tomorrow. Yeah, thanks for dropping by, Z. And I hope you all, if you are interested in physics content, go ahead and drop by Z's stream tomorrow. Yeah. How much energy it takes for a protein to hold on to chromatin. Yeah, free energy was a big part of biophysics. Real big headache, if I remember correctly, but still very interesting to learn about. Bye, Z. Have a good day. So I wanted to talk about, we can certainly continue academic discussion and stuff, but I kind of wanted to pivot slightly to something that Toxo showed me today. So Toxo, I'm not going to say what Toxo does for a living, but Toxo does not work for a corporation and works instead for something that is not a corporation in a field that is academic. And so she was showing me some personal statements, which I am actually very passionate about, especially because there are so many students and people in training and people who are going to require, like if you're in medical school, you still have to write personal statements. And so I wanted to sort of soapbox on this. And this is also for those of you who don't have to write personal statements anymore. This is still, I think, going to be interesting for you because there's something intellectual about this exercise of a personal statement. So for those of you who don't know, or maybe for those of you who are not familiar with this term, because you might have your equivalent in your language, but a personal statement is an essay that you write that describes who you are as a person to a potential employer or a person who is offering you an opportunity of some kind. I'm writing personal statements right now, so this is going to be very relevant for you, Otto. I actually minored in English, I should say. And so personal statement writing was actually something that I focused very heavily on in terms of understanding what makes for a good personal statement. And so the reason why I think this is broadly an interesting question is that this is an issue of marketing. And marketing, I think, is an interesting social concept. This idea of how do you convey yourself in the best possible light to a potential opportunity, or even to a potential other entity, or even to a potential other person, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a corporation. And the reason why I found this personal statement very interesting, I didn't read it, she didn't show me the personal statement, but she described the personal statement. And I found it to be very interesting because on paper, this person was extremely, extremely qualified. It is a wonder that this person, who is quite a bit younger than me, has ended up doing more work than I have currently done to this date. But I still found the personal statement to be not good. And so why is that? Because people, I think, are not good at talking about their own achievements. And I think that I am. Let me explain myself. I think that I am someone who can be honest about my achievements without appearing to humble brag. And my philosophy behind that is because I am okay with bragging. I think that if you are going to talk about your achievements, that you should be very proud of them, because you should. You should not downplay your achievements because you want to come across as humble, at least in the US, right? I can't speak for any other kind of cultural context, but in the US, I think it shows more emotional sincerity that you do show in your personal statement how proud you are of your achievements. And this personal statement was full of incredible work, but they were all manufactured in the light of, oh, but it wasn't a big deal. And that drove me crazy. And why I think this is an interesting topic of discussion is because of why, and the philosophy behind why personal statements are even a thing. This doesn't actually apply to you if you are applying for a job that is doing AI parsing. And, I can't speak for that life. I've been an academic basically all my life. I've been teaching since I was 16, 18, something around that. So I've always been in institutions where your personal statement actually gets read by a human being. And Toxo works in a place where your personal statement still gets read by a human being. And so this idea of turning down an application due to a difference or an incompatibility with personality, I think is interesting. And I want to kind of just pause there to ask chat if you've ever thought about that as a thing that could have even been possible. So how many of you in chat have actually written a personal statement? So I'll start a Q&A. No, not a Q&A. I'll start a poll. How many of you have actually written a personal statement? This equivalent essay that you are describing your own life, your own struggles, your own personality to someone who wants to hire you. I'm assuming that if you are in America and you are in college, that you most likely have. There's someone I know that his interviewer for a job didn't believe his CV because he had too much on it. Yeah. I mean, this personal statement definitely felt like that, where it's just like, man, you've done so much. It's crazy. Okay, so it's about half and half so far. That's actually quite interesting. I don't think so, but maybe I've just blocked that memory out. So if you want to go to like a residency program, as an example, or graduate school, uh, you still have to write personal statements. I don't know outside of these two postgraduate like uh, places how many other places require a personal statement. I think probably nonprofits might have. Um, I had to write one actually for my current job. So even like though I'm not in graduate school anymore, I still had to write one because I'm working at a university right now. Uh, and so yeah, I've written quite a couple. So the people in chat that have written a personal statement, I wonder if you have given any thought as to how you come across as a human being to the person reading your application. And it's an aspect that I think that is underappreciated with regards to crafting this piece of self-marketing, because it might seem silly, but the personal statement is kind of a vibe check. The CV and the resume, that's the part of the application that has your achievements. So the personal statement really is like, who are you as a person, as a human being? And the way that at least the institutions that I've been a part of, the thing that they want to see is, are you a good fit for the culture of whatever institution you are applying to? And so hearing about this personal statement that was really humble braggy did not give the impression that this person was going to be a team player. This isn't like a cover letter, is it? It's kind of like a cover letter, but is more about your own life, right? It's more about your own life, because a cover letter is a short letter of intent describing your relevant experience. A personal statement is like, oh, so I can talk about my personal statement actually, because I wrote one for the job that I currently applied to. So I applied to a teaching job at a research institution, and my goal was to convince the people that were hiring me that I was a dedicated teacher, because they were hiring for a full-time position for a teacher. So I did my research, and one particular attitude that people have about full-time teachers is that, the only people who teach are people who are buying time to find a postdoc somewhere or a permanent research position. No one actually wants to teach. So I had this strategy of, I need to convey the aspects of my personhood that convinces the reader that I am here to teach, that I love teaching. And that's easy to do because I genuinely love teaching. Of course, I do it for a living, and I do it as a hobby. That's how dedicated of a teacher I am. So in my personal statement, I talked about my scientific heroes, and that's not something that you would actually talk about in a cover letter, right? This is more flowery, narrative based. This is who I am as a person outside of the job that I'm applying for. Like, I have been teaching since I was still in school as a high schooler, helping students study for their SATs, and then I was doing this for so long, and I really admire like great scientific communicators like Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson, et cetera, and from their communication, I drew this inspiration of making complicated material accessible for everybody. I was writing in this way where I was trying to convey the aspect of my personhood that treats teaching not as a side thing to do while I wait for a research position to open, but as my true calling. And I also wanted to convey the parts of my being that are that understand the needs of students, right? So I was careful in crafting my personal statement to show those sides of me that I have been teaching. And not only have I been teaching, but I've also been listening to the feedback that my students are giving me. Not only their direct feedback through their evaluations, but that I am capable of observing a student's performance over a semester and reacting accordingly. Like that kind of thing, right? Like, I wanted to show that who I am is a teacher, right? And so I hope that kind of gives you an idea of why that's different than a cover letter, which is like, I would like to work at your company. This is how great I am. Whereas a personal statement is supposed to be, this is who I am as a person. I've returned to the absolute terror of personal statements. Hey, Mylan, welcome back. Mylan, another member of V-Theorem Fandom Psychology. Very interesting videos. Go check them out. Yeah, terrifying. They're very difficult to write. So if you've never written a personal statement and about half of chat hasn't written a personal statement, these are some of the most difficult pieces of writing I think that can be done, right? It's not only awkward to brag about yourself, but to brag about yourself in your own voice, not as a machine, but your own personhood, like you're having a conversation, is very, very, very difficult. I'm taking a professional writing class and they emphasize personal reflection and discussing the implications of what you've done and how well suited you are in the essay, basically taking a step further from showing your achievements. Exactly. Like, and the essay that I'm referring to actually did very well. They explained their achievements and how that shaped who they are as a person. But the way that they treated how they think of their own achievements was not good. Not getting into specifics, but essentially humble bragging, and like that is not a feature of someone that you might want on a team, which is why a personal statement differs so much from a cover letter, because a cover letter is a very cold corporate kind of document, whereas a personal statement is, hey, here's my vibe check. That's basically the purpose of a personal statement. Now, in the personal statement, you're also supposed to be like, this is why I'm also great, but I'm great, and also here's my vibe. And that's the strategy you should have in mind when talking about a personal statement. I've always hated personal statements because they don't feel genuine, at least not the way I was taught to write them. That's why I feel like I can actually do a service to the students who are still writing personal statements in chat, because personal statement writing, if you aren't good at finding your own voice, feels fake. Like, for sure, it feels fake. And it feels fake for a while until you get comfortable with essentially making your own content. Like, because a personal statement is written as you are speaking, right? I have a very strong understanding of my own voice. I like Otto, have taken professional writing classes where I have been trained to practice writing in the way that I would speak, which is not easy or straightforward, which is why when you try to write a personal statement, it can come across as humble braggy. But I imagine, Merkala, that if I were to have a conversation with you about something that you were passionate about, I bet that would feel a lot better than writing a personal statement. Do you change your personality on the job and with friends? I don't like the framing of changing personality because it implies a level of fakeness. I think the better way to frame that idea is faces, right? So there's this idea of face, and you show a different face depending on what context you're in. All of the faces belong to you, but of course, I am not telling my coworkers that I programmed a waifu test where it tells you exactly what your degenerate tastes are based on your rating of 100 anime waifus. That's just not a face that I show my coworkers or my family, but my friends or stream, that is a face that I can show, right? So the idea of the different faces, that is also an interesting connection to this idea of a personal statement, because you have to show a face that's even more intimate than the one that you would show anybody else, because the personal statement, the face that you show, to put it in a very corny way, is kind of the face of your soul, right? The kind of sincere passion that you might have for something that you want so bad, and that in your heart of hearts you are perfect for, which is a lot of big words in terms of like, how can anybody be that confident, right? But you have to hype yourself up to be that confident if you actually want a good personal statement. Yeah, the balance between bragging about being humble and then showing who you are without being too personal. There's some theories of personality that frame your personality as a network. It's just certain parts of that network activate in different situations, but they're all you, just different facets. Again, love having psychologists in V-Theorem. Thank you very much, Mylan. So the delicate balance and the way that you get there, I think, is to actually force yourself to like talk to a friend about your sincere passion, and to remember the language that you use when you are doing so, because I think it would be the easiest thing in the world to train an AI on how I talk, because I have, from when I was a kid, placed a lot of value in being a good orator. I was very inspired by Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I believe said the reason why I come off as so eloquent is because there is never a sentence that I've spoken out loud that I haven't first written down. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was basically trying as a kid to speak like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, at this age, I have fully differentiated into my own way of speaking. But I've had for a very long time this motivation to communicate why I am passionate about certain things, and making sure that the people that I'm talking to are hyped up by what I have to say has always been an important part of my lexicon. In which case, I'm very lucky because that transitions very smoothly into a personal statement. Because a personal statement for me has become a lot easier because it's just like chatting on stream. It's just like I talk about what I'm passionate about all the time, but not everybody has had that opportunity. So if you do that and you do it in an egoless way, like not putting yourself in the equation, just talk about what you like, remembering how that feeling felt and trying to convey that feeling makes your personal statement stronger. And to combat the feeling that you are humble bragging, my advice is just brag. Just flat out brag. I hate humble bragging. Not only from like I have a humble bragging story. So here's why I hate humble bragging. I went to a very, very, very competitive high school. I would say that the people I met in high school rival the intelligence of the people that I met in graduate school on average. So like on average, the like big brain intensity of the high school I went to matched where I ended up in graduate school. And it was like humble brag city back then. And it would drive me crazy because I never humble bragged. I could not find it in my own soul to say humble brag words out loud without vomiting a little in my mouth. I would just brag. If I won something, I would celebrate. And I think that is valid and good. And I had this friend who I inadvertently stopped talking to. And I didn't know why, because I wasn't like very emotionally mature back then. And I wasn't very emotionally cognizant that this was happening to me. But, you know, we were quite close for a while until our careers, you know, started to matter more. And I noticed that a lot of our conversations started to head to what opportunities he was able to get. We were both aiming to be doctors. And I have experienced failure pretty devastatingly academically my entire life. I've actually mentioned this in my failure stream where like most of the opportunities that I've applied to I've been rejected from. And this guy was like landing them like it was nothing. Like, especially back then, to get a research opportunity in a real lab as a high schooler in the year 20s, unheard of, unless you had incredible connections or something, or if you were very, very capable. And he would just like casually drop like how that was going, and you know, of course, very humble about it. Like knowing that I was also looking, and maybe that's pity. That's like petty of me, right? Maybe it was petty, but I think it would have been more fun if he had just bragged. Because humble bragging downplays the effort that it took to actually achieve your accomplishment, or the equivalent. So if he had just said, I worked freaking hard for this, man, all these like drafts that I did, you know, I like didn't hang out with anybody for like a month, and I got the thing, and then that would have been a worthy thing for celebration, instead of like, oh, you know, I'm working at blah, blah, blah university, you know, blah, blah, blah Ivy League, blah, blah, blah research program. Oh, you know, it's whatever. It's like, it drives me crazy. So if you genuinely celebrate your accomplishments in your personal statement, if you talk about how much those opportunities mean to you, if you actually brag, if you sincerely brag about what you've done in your life, sincerely, of course, like, you don't just say like I'm the best, but you say the amazing thing that you did, and then you talk about how that makes you feel. I think nobody could say that that comes across as bad, right? Like, say for example, successful. I brought a guy back to life, something crazy like that. Like, let's say I'm applying for medical school like I wanted to back in undergraduate, and I had a life-changing experience where I don't know, I witnessed someone in distress, and I administered CPR, and later on I learned that the person survived. I would brag the crap out of that experience. Are you kidding me? Like, as someone who is now on the side of reading personal statements, that's an incredible story. Now, to couch that in like someone who is likable, you also have to say, you don't just say that like, oh, but like it was nothing. Like, oh, you know, I'm sure I'll do more in the future. Like, no, celebrate it. I saved somebody. I might not be able to save everybody in the future, but I remember the feeling of having made a potential difference in somebody's life. And I believe that I have found what it is that I am meant to do. Like, that's celebration. That's good. I think that's worthy. I think that that's likable, right? We all want to root for somebody who maybe even stumbles into something that means that much to them. To like say something else, like just you know, randomly generating another profile in my head. Say like you're writing a personal statement for a college, and what you want to do is programming. So like, you know, because medical school always has the most like sob stories, I think, like, oh, you know, I want to save the world because so many things happened, and you know. But for something like programming, where you know it's like less save the world kind of stuff, you can say that like, oh, I remember taking this boot camp, and I remember the feeling of empowerment that I could actually like convert the ideas that I have in my head to something actually workable, to the point where, you know, I did this little side project that I thought was going to go nowhere. But then the feeling of having finished that side project brought me so much joy that I can't imagine doing anything else for a living. Like, because a lot of personal statements would go, oh, I did the side project, and then maybe even downplay that. But oh, like it was just a little thing, I don't know, that like colors pixels red or something like that. And then sort of be like, but it's like not a big deal. And then like try to, because they think that downplaying that achievement implies that they have bigger achievements and goals in the future, when in reality it just comes across as self-important, and you don't want to come across as self-important. So I'll go, I soapboxed for a long time, so I'll go back and read some chat. I think that was part of my problem. We were taught to try and shove ourselves into whatever box we would most likely be able to get our college application accepted. So you had to be very careful about how you couched who you were. Yeah, there's a fundamental compatibility problem because there's an asymmetry of knowledge. When you are a student looking to apply for colleges, you often don't know what the culture is like on campus, but they do. And so if you apply for, say, a very geeky engineering school like MIT, you might choose to upplay the geeky aspects of your personality. Of course, if you aren't fit for the culture, like the geeky culture of MIT, it's like not great to lie about that kind of thing, you know? Like, ultimately what matching algorithms and matching strategies are trying to do is finding a place where you will be happy. And so, you know, if you genuinely think you will be happy at MIT because you identify with the culture, talk very sincerely about what makes you a geeky engineering guy, or sorry to be inclusive, geeky engineering person, right? Like, but because there is the influence of capitalism, because you are influenced by, not you specifically, Mercala, but like you publicly, everybody applying to colleges or graduate programs, because there is a financial obligation that you want to go to the best program to make the most money, to make sure you have food on the table, which are motivations that, of course, I believe in. There is this idea that you should try to squeeze in those boxes, which I think is, from my side, from having a sneak behind the other, like the DM screen, right, the Dungeon Master screen, I can say that like The part of you that brags about your accomplishments is already in your CV and resume. The part about you vibing with the culture of campus is the personal statement. And I'm sorry that they taught you potentially otherwise. I feel old now because I want to speak like Carl Sagan. We span quite a bit of age ranges on the Phi the Neutral channel. Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, I could go back further too, right? Although Carl Sagan is a bit out of my range, I think the furthest science communicator that I drew inspiration from was probably Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is a fantastically eloquent communicator. As a public figure for the communication of science, you can think whatever you want of him, but if you listen to him talk about biology, it is very striking. Although if you go back even further, my OG oldest inspiration for science communication is actually Charles Darwin, because The Origin of Species is an incredibly well-written book and is very readable in certain chapters. Other chapters, not so much, but in certain chapters, very readable and very beautiful. I'm in high school praying for a research opportunity. Yeah, the arms race for high school research opportunities has only increased. I'd look into grants, just see what you're eligible for. Especially because the political situation in America, a lot of these research grants for supporting education might not even exist anymore. So get them while they're hot, I guess. I'd like to exaggerate my bragging to make less awkward. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. I would try to be comfortable with sincerely bragging. I just think that that increases your chance that your essay comes off as sincere. And that means facing down sincerity in its most potent form, right? I think that's not easy. In fact, it wasn't easy for me either, right? Because I quit medical school because I had to say the words out loud. I love biology more than I want to be a doctor. I had to like tell my parents that, and they were temporarily like shocked and you know, I had been telling them that I wanted to be a medical doctor my entire life. The pain of sincerity, the emotional breakthrough you have when you say what you want out loud, I think that being comfortable and sitting in that pain, as you admit what it is that you actually want out of life, that it helps to come across as more sincere. Although you might be too young to actually even have that figured out. That also means that like Blue Period at the anime, any anime where the main character says out loud, like has a life built for them, but then realizes they don't want that life, I like cry ugly, watery tears, just huge droplets. I would, if I were a media critique channel, I would love to do a video essay on Blue Period and how discovering sincerity is like one of the most powerful feelings of empowerment that you could possibly have. And I think if you try to verbalize that desire, that just makes the personal statement a lot better. Because I think that like my personal statements about me wanting to be a doctor, I didn't know what I wanted at the time. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I think those were my weakest personal statements because I had no idea what I wanted. And of course, if you are that young, it's really hard to know what it is that you actually want. So I don't blame you if you can't get to that level, but if you could try to find a bit of sincere passion for something and then verbalize it out loud, even better is to say it to another human being, so you have to confront the shame of expressing yourself sincerely. I think that is very powerful. Very, very powerful. I brought someone back to life, but it took 3 days, and when there was no wine in the wedding, I turned water into wine. I think a lot of places would be quite interested in hiring you. Especially in large swaths of America. The sob stories are so true. Yeah. I mean, I will never cast doubt on the sincerity of the sob stories because that's just rude to do. But because they almost become like a personal statement cliche, people get very self-conscious about writing them. I just think that, like, I don't know, maybe it'd be fun to would you be interested in critiquing your personal statement on stream? I think that's an insane stream idea. That's insane for a stream. But I floated the idea in my Discord of like critiquing undergraduate work for a live audience before, and I'm still a little mixed as an idea. Like, I don't know if people would watch that or if people would even feel comfortable having their like stuff torn apart on stream. But I think in my mission of like providing education from someone who teaches at a university level for free for everybody, it could be genuinely very cool to do. But that's only if people are like willing to have their like life torn apart. True chaotic idea. It is very chaotic. That's why I'm like, it's an idea, and it would take an equally chaotic student to actually want that to happen for them. But I don't know, it's something. It's because a lot of the things that I actually teach in my professional life, yeah, putting it in anonymously, yeah, we could come up with some like anonymization things, like changing anecdotes, removing names, stuff like that. Maybe even running. No, that's not going to be good. What? Okay, so what about this? Why don't we critique ChatGPT's personal statements? Wouldn't that be interesting? I think that would be actually very cool. I think that would be very cool. I'm going to add that to the incentive list, actually, because then we don't have to deal with a real human, and we can instead do like the truest of anonymous personal statements. ChatGPT personal statement critique stream. I think that's actually very cool. It's very neat. Yeah. I'm also fascinated with this idea of expressing sincerity, because I think it's hard, and I find myself to be a very sincere type of person. We can still distill takeaways. Live roasting session is better. I mean, it would be, but I'm afraid that, like, I'm afraid of the consequences potentially, because, like, you know, the essay gets put up online, and then maybe weirdos like log it online, and then it becomes searchable, and then I would prefer not to endanger anybody, even with a remote chance of that happening. So I think ChatGPT personal statement critique is actually perfect, because I mean, large language models are pretty damn good nowadays. So we can analyze either, you know, say stuff that is good about a ChatGPT personal statement, and then also look at something that is bad. So this is actually a very genuinely good usage of ChatGPT as a teaching tool, right? Of course, I'm not advocating that you just use ChatGPT for your personal statement, because that is ultimately going to harm you more than you think. Because if you end up in a culture that you don't like, you're just going to have a miserable time anyway, right? Like, let me tell you, the culture at Harvard, not all that it's cracked up to be. I'm not speaking from firsthand experience, but everybody that I've talked to at Harvard is like, Harvard is miserable. So if you're ChatGPTing, thinking that like, oh, ChatGPT will write the best personal statement that will get me to the best university, and then you end up at a university whose culture you don't align with, that's really going to hurt you way worse than just sticking it out and learning how to write a good personal statement. Critique examples of personal statements are put out on like Purdue Owl or something. Oh, I have never heard of Purdue Owl. Let me go and add that to the note to check that out. Purdue Owl. That's cool. If you could say a little bit more about what that actually is, that would really, I think, be very interesting, Rakala. Those of us under the nuclear umbrella won't. I'm not sure what that's a comment. We will be the first targets of Skynet. Ah, I see. Yeah. Have two ChatGPTs argue violently about ChatGPT's personal statement. That would be kind of funny. UPitt Med School has a doc with personal statement examples. Oh, okay. That might be interesting to dig through. I think there's critique and there's also appreciation. UPitt Med School. That's actually very cool. When are applications due? Because I ideally want to do it when it's still relevant. I don't know if any of you are currently applying. I guess you're all from all over the world, so maybe it'll be relevant for somebody whenever I end up being able to do it. But yeah, I think the idea of communicating sincerely, I think, is also something that I've been thinking a lot about because of this like internet pilled age of irony as being the default mode of communication. Whereas because some people say that like they often have a hard time talking about their feelings and stuff, and to some degree before therapy I also had that thought because I would tend to intellectualize what I was feeling, and then that made it a lot easier to talk about because it was in terms that I could actually think about. But I still think there's value in talking about the things that you feel, and I find that, you know, depending on the face that you show different people, that there are people that you do not do that with, that you you know, for good reason, maybe don't feel comfortable sharing your thoughts, but then there are people that you are comfortable with sharing those thoughts. And I've been something that I've been endlessly fascinated by is the determinants, the social determinant. I don't know, Mylan, if you're still in stream, but I'm interested in the social determinants of what makes a friend dynamic more or less open to sharing personal thoughts. Because there's things like introversion, extroversion, openness, and agreeableness that I'm vaguely aware from the field of psychology. But this is almost more of like a compatibility problem, I think. And I think that mismatch is interesting, or figuring out what factors play into whether or not you feel safe talking about those certain things. AMCAS opens in the summer. Oh, that leaves plenty of time for that. 2025 cycle is basically over. Ah, I see. Do you think America is more braggy than Europe, or the other way around? I don't have enough students from Europe to say. From my cultural understanding of Europeans is that they do not tend to brag about their achievements, which I think is a shame. I kind of wonder how personal statements work in Europe, if Europe even does personal statements to begin with, because, you know, I'm not entirely sure, but I get the feeling that personal statements are a uniquely American thing. I don't know about the US, but in the EU, it really depends on the country. Yeah, I imagine so, because you can't really lump all of Europe under the same umbrella. Although I find it hard to believe that any country in the world is more boisterous than America. But that's actually not reflected in the student personal statements. I think everybody has the feeling that they should be humble in a personal statement, but I think that's wrong. The site is run by Purdue University, so it's legit. Okay, so is it like a data bank of personal statement examples? OWL stands for Online Writing Lab. Oh, very, very cool. I see. That explains it. Thank you very much. I'm comfortable because I'm kind of shallow, or okay, I IDK a lot about myself. That's interesting as well. Comfortable, like talking about the feelings, or what? In Germany, there is a, oh god, I'm gonna butcher it. Viewer bung, an advert. Oh, okay, where you sort of do a personal statement. I see. So Germany has some sort of personal statement equivalent. Are those very awkward to write as well? And are those like, do you think the goal of it is the same? Because for me, the personal statement is a vibe check. Little hint for graduate school, for at least R1 research universities. If you get an interview from a research university, you're already in, basically. And then the interview part is just a vibe check. So the personal statement is kind of your first vibe check to get the university to invite you over. And then when you tour the campus and the people get to meet you, they're evaluating you for you being a decent person. So I've actually have personal stories from graduate school secondhand because I didn't get involved in graduate student recruiting, but I've heard horror stories of people who applied, they were very smart, very capable, and then they came and they were intolerable. So just know that when you apply for at least graduate school, I don't know about medical school at all, or residency, but at least for graduate school, it's a vibe check when you do your interview, and it's the second vibe check you get because the first vibe check is the personal statement. Bewerbung is roughly how it's pronounced. I see. Can confirm that the interview stage is just a vibe check. Exactly. Like you're already in. They think you're smart. You just have to be a decent human being, which for some people is actually wildly challenging, which I find to be incredible. Like it takes some level of discipline and adulting to make it far enough in a graduate student application to get accepted for an interview. Like you have to be pretty functional to get there. And then to just show up and be like a unpleasant person is a wild thing to me. That it boggles my mind how that even happens. Not to say that like all graduate students are like great people. It's just that like how how did you get this far in life being this like this incompatible with social norms? And not in like a awkward kind of way, because I don't want to stigmatize awkward people, but like incredible faux pas, including correcting professors on their own research, which of course are not corrections because they're just wrong, right? Stuff like that is not under the umbrella of like social awkwardness. That is under the umbrella of having a personality that is incompatible with teamwork. Can you tell that I'm in my teacher mode? I hear they're very important in finance, where vibes are very important. That makes sense to me, actually. That does make sense, because I get the feeling that finance bros are called finance bros for a reason. You've got to do a personal statement for the UK, but it's mostly talking about what you did and not about your life or your personality. I see. So it's a little more removed, I suppose. This has been going on for 2 hours. I didn't get a notification. Oh, I'm so sorry. I wonder, did you, are you getting notifications through Discord or through YouTube? Because that's mildly concerning. In my experience, it's the people who lean too hard and they're trying to prove how smart they are during interviews. Yeah, and that's like the feeling I get from some of these personal statements where like the humble bragging comes across as trying to prove how smart you are. It might speak to a level of insecurity where they feel like they have to humble brag in order to communicate how smart they actually are, and that's not attractive. In graduate school, so, you know, people have different experience in graduate school in terms of like, what's the term? Imposter syndrome. For me, graduate school is where I felt very comfortable in terms of my abilities as a teacher. My abilities as a researcher, I was always insecure with, but in terms of getting comfortable with admitting to myself that I am kind of smart, that happened in graduate school for me. I don't think I'm wildly smart, because I don't think you have to be wildly smart to go to graduate school. But for a long time, I was like, because of my bad memory, I was on the verge of thinking that maybe I was not even like normal at certain times, because of just how hard I had to work to stay pace with my colleagues at high school. But like the personality shift of like, if you are, you know, from the perspective of someone behind the screen, like you're recruiting for a potential collaborator, and if they are deeply insecure about their intelligence, or if they feel the need to project intelligence onto other people, they're just not going to be like cool people to work with. You really want to make sure that you come across as someone who people want at their university. And that, I think that's a good way of explaining it, because that's more than just your academic accomplishments, right? Like you can say, I did this research at this clinic, I did this volunteer opportunity here, blah 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 blah, and that you know, sure, it shows you're driven, blah blah blah, it shows that you work hard, whatever. Part of the personal statement is like, if you come to the campus, are you going to be someone who makes the people around you happy to work with you? Are you going to be a capable person to work with? Maybe you are, you know, because professors don't want to recruit undergrads who are going to be sabotaging other undergrads in the lab. You know, universities are not going to want people in their student organizations that are going to be detrimental to the culture, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, brag about your achievements, but also try to give people a little sense of who you are as a person. And that can include your sense of humor, right? Like, if your sense of humor is like really problematic, maybe don't do that. But like, if you have a little bit of clever witticisms, or if you have cute hobbies, you know, stuff like that, it might seem meaningless. But if an application has a section where you get to put your hobbies, don't force those hobbies to be productive, right? Like, don't say your hobby is I'm an EMT. Don't. That comes across as humble bragging and insincere. Put you watch every season of the Golden Bachelor or the Bachelor religiously. Do that. Do something, because it's not even important what goes in the hobby section. People just want to know. That's the hack here, right? That's the behind the scenes hack. If there's a hobby section, be real, because they just want to know that you are a well-rounded human being. It doesn't all have to be about how you're so much smarter than all the other competitions. Through YouTube. YouTube, it's a little harder to debug because who knows what YouTube the YouTube notification system does sometimes. We do recommendation letters mainly where I live. Yeah, in the US, it's very common to require recommendation letters for things like graduate school or medical school as well. And that's also a very powerful vibe check, because a professor's word is pretty strong, and is also, again, a vibe check. And again, because you never see that recommendation letter, your professor is likely not going to be inclined to lie on your behalf, because they want to retain a good, honest reputation for recommending quality students. So there is some quality assurance built into that system there. I've heard that people are getting unsubscribed from other channels. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I don't know. YouTube can be hit or miss sometimes. If you notice one of your students is insecure, do you try to talk about it or just ignore it? The thing is that falls under the category of mentorship and not under the category of teaching. See, in university, it's generally assumed that students are adults at that point and don't need some of this personality, or not personality, but rather like life stuff adjustment. Because like in the US, it's expected that your K through 12 teacher is not only double as your teacher, but also as your therapist, you know, your behavior coordinator, and it's not fair to them, but it is how it is in the US. So you can get more of that mentorship in. The relationship that I have with my students is you are here to learn how to do biology, and then you leave. And I'm okay with maintaining that barrier. It's not my job to be like, hey, you know, grow up. That's honestly because they're adults, right? And you can't talk that way to an adult. You can't like take them aside and be like, this is for your own good. You should really look in the mirror and think about how you come across to other people, because I would get fired if I did that, right? That's literally not my job description. That is way overreaching. And God forbid that student complain to their parents and then they complain to the dean, and then I get fired, right? So you know, it's just not my job. And that's kind of unfortunate. An unfortunate aspect about being an adult is that there's this assumption that you just get to make mistakes and figure it out from there on, which for someone like me is awesome because I hate being told what to do. But some people take longer than others to figure out that same information. I've certainly had, I think, interesting personalities in my classrooms over the years, and I have never, ever once even had the thought of recommending that they change their behavior. If I had to, it would be in a situation where they were being bad to their partners, like group mates. And in which case I would be like, you know, it has been brought to my attention that there have been certain issues regarding the dynamic within the group, and I would like to hold a meeting to address how we can move forward, which can sometimes, what might be more valuable for some people, which I'm not allowed to do, is just to be like, hey, you're kind of being a C word right now. And like, people aren't going to like you And if people don't like you, they're not going to like working with you. If they don't like working with you, they're not going to hire you. And if they're not going to hire you, you're going to think that you aren't good enough for them. When in reality, you probably are good enough for them. You're just not pleasant to be around. And you can't say that to an adult, which is very frustrating. But you know, that it is what it is, right? You can't take on that level of burden for adults, which is, you know, whatever. But that's kind of why I think personal statement is uh, so powerful, right? As a conversation topic, because it really brings to mind, like, who am I as a person? You know, what is my what are others' perception of me as a human? You know, I've given chat, as is inevitable as a streamer, a little bit of information about myself, and of course, I am displaying to you myself in a very genuine and sincere but incomplete form, right? You have never seen me not buttoned up in my streamer mode. But it is a mode that I do enjoy being in, and it is true to who I am as a person. It's just not all of me. Do teachers gossip about students? Yes, I will not go into too much detail. I will say that I am thinking of implementing a 4-year rule where I don't gossip with any of you until the students are well beyond graduated, just to minimize, you know, anything funny that can happen from that. But students, you never. Okay, so here's the thing: when you're a student and you're an undergrad and you are studying all the time, you're not really in tune with how other students are doing. But as a teacher, you get to see all of it. You get to see everybody's struggle, and you get to see how many students struggle, and that's actually the most eye-opening thing, because when you're a student, you're like, oh my god, I suck, everybody's doing much better than me, I'm not getting what I want in terms of my opportunities, and it can be pretty demoralizing. As on the other side, I'm like, y'all have it rough, and that could be because post-COVID education has been irreparably changed, and the quality of education has just, it's needed an adjustment period. I'll say that in my teacher voice, right? And so maybe there's some overrepresentation of struggle from the collective trauma we have over that time period. But it's also like, oh, from my perspective, a lot more students have struggles than I initially expected. So if you are struggling in undergrad, you know, just know that even at very good universities, a lot of students are dealing with, are struggling to manage, and that is normal. But you know, I do recommend that you get help, because while it is normal, it does not necessarily have to be accepted, right? We can do a lot to help you out there. You seem like a chill but sincere professor. Thank you. I am actually not a professor. I dare not wear that title. I never got my PhD, but I have proven myself to be a capable enough master of biology to teach at a university level. I'd like to think that I come across as pretty chill, but you also only see me in chill circumstances, and some of those rewards on the bad wheel might change that. Actually, why don't we change the slide from shilling for Z, which, you know, I do love doing, onto the bad wheel suggestion slide, just in case people join late and want to add stuff to the bad wheel. Some students have some massive egos. I've seen some of that couldn't handle some complaints from their professors. Adults are just kids with beards. That's really funny. Yeah. I will not get into detail, but that is something that I have found to be true as well, that critique of student work, there's always a little bit of anxiety at the start of a semester, because you never know, like, which students are about to give you some serious flack for thinking that they are anything less than the perfect student already. And I know that that is not entirely a personality thing. Oftentimes there are financial incentives, right? A lot of pre-med students are infamous for this kind of behavior because they feel like every point you shave off of their grade is like cutting off a finger, which, I mean, they're not entirely wrong, but the only thing that I have to say to that is, well, just get good. Here's my pre-med rant. In a nutshell, because I've done this right before, but like in the US, yes, you will not be tested on physics when you are in med school beyond, like, I don't know, arteries pumping blood volume or something. The thing in the US is that medical school is very, very tough as it is around the globe, and your grade is a skill check for how you operate under pressure. It's not actually how well you know chemistry, biology, or physics, because you'll learn that in medical school, the parts that are more relevant for medicine to begin with. It's a skill check. So if you are complaining that your grade is lower than you want it to be, you are literally not as qualified to for the upcoming skill check. And so I have very little sympathy for pre-med students who complain about their grades. It took me a long time to realize that. As a child, I always waited for becoming the serious, emotionless machine of a problem solver, and then I never did. Yeah, I feel like I mentally never aged past like 25, I think. And I think VTubing will help me hide my age forever. I I want to take a poll. How old do you think I am? How old do you think the body in which I inhabit is? Because of course, Phyte the neutrophil, as I am before you, I have a lifespan of 8 days. But how old does chat think I actually am? I'd be very curious to see. I've overheard some heinous stuff because they didn't know I was in class early. I'm not entirely sure what that comment is in reference to. All right, seeing some answers come in. All right. How will the charity stream work? Donation milestones with good and bad rewards? Yeah, so there's a community. I'll go back to the slide, Spepic, because you were not here, but maybe I should just have it here. This is a better slide to just kind of hang out on. So there'll be community milestones that'll be based on the total amount raised by the community, and this is like content stuff. So I'll summarize this in a community post or a post in my Discord about the ideas that we have going on. So like I thought about like making more Plague Inc. shorts because I know I have a lot of viewers who like the Plague Inc. content, stuff that I need to take time to make. And then good and bad wheel, if anybody donates at least $10, they can make me spin a good wheel during the breaks of the stream, and in which case I'll do something like 10 push-ups or something. And then the bad wheel, which is like punishments, which I'm very interested to do because I like pushing my scientific boundaries. Taking a look at the guesses. All right. Yeah. So, well, I'll say that I'm not going to react to what people have guessed. Certainly interesting. Some of these are certainly interesting. And I'm just going to quietly smile to myself, and you'll just have to live with that knowledge. Although I think the only person that might actually learn my actual age might be Mylan, because I think we're probably going to end up doxing each other at some point through this journey through V theorem. But I am at least tickled by some of these guesses. Very fun. I'll say I am young enough to be on the bandwagon for VTubers. That is something that I think is valid to say, given that I myself am a VTuber. Okay, so it is getting on in time. I enjoyed chatting with all of you. I didn't get to do a previous stream because of vacation. Toxo's parents came to visit, which I thought was very lovely. They come and they're very generous, which means I've eaten like an absolute glutton over the Thanksgiving break. Prekinji's health has been up and down, but she recently got a clean bill of health, if you haven't heard, which means that we can stop some of her antibiotics, which has been really great. And she has actually started to voluntarily eat her food. Let's freaking go! She is actually recovering from this cholangial hepatitis, and there's very good reason to believe that she does not have the chronic form of this disease, which would have been absolutely tragic because the chronic form of feline cholangial hepatitis has a median survival age after onset of just 1 year, and the fact that she has just the acute version most likely is very heartening, I'll say. So Prekinji, thankfully, I think will have many a year to yell at me for food. She's actually being very polite now, just sort of like hanging out and rubbing against me. She's actually weirdly quieter when I'm on stream, because if I weren't on stream, if it was this late, she'd actually just be yelling at me. One of these days, maybe you'll actually hear Prakinji yell for food if I wait long enough. Hag professor. Hey, the hags are in demand. I will wear that badge with pride. With pride. All right. Okay. So, okay, Prakinji is here. If I bring Prakinji up to the microphone, I wonder if she'll say bye to you all. Prakinji, come here. Come here. Do you want to tell chat how hungry you are right now, in this moment? Have anything to say to chat? No. No, you are quite. You are totally silent. You have no opinions as to whether or not I should feed you. All right. All right. Prakinji's being polite. Doesn't want to interrupt the stream. But I will go now and give her her meal, which she will eat by mouth, thankfully. And hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow in Z's stream. Sissa G. You can find her information in my community, not my community tab, but my my main channel page, where if you scroll to the bottom, you can find all the links to the VTheorem members. And I will see you later. Bye, y'all. Oh, also, Ebola video drops sometime this month. I am working very hard on it now that classes are basically over for me. Bye, y'all. Bye-bye. Bye.